in one basket.
There you go. I've not heard from the mayor today. Does anyone know if he's planning to join this evening, or should we get started?
YouTube video is ready yet. I think we can go if you would like.
Yeah, let's
Well,
go
hold
ahead.
on. We have a
Let's-
quorum?
Yep, and again, it's a
Okay.
budget review. We don't necessarily need a quorum.
Okay.
It's just a discussion. So I think we're good to go. And if the mayor joins us, we can see if he's got any remarks upon his joining. If not, he's got the recording and we can go from there. So tonight, Tom, it's all about you and Henry.
Yeah, so hold on. I'm watching closely my emails in case anybody is challenged with the Zoom link. So far, so good, but just forgive me if I have to occasionally jump over there. But yes, tonight we're talking about the finance department, the chief finance officers area, which is Henry's World, and myself and Chitsmay and Sharon and all the others that are on here. And then we're going to move on to the 5 different grants. And again, these are grants that we give to people. These are not grants that we go out and solicit. So things
Right.
like the Harbor Commission and transportation and so on and so forth.
Right.
So with that being said, I am going to start sharing my screen.
Okay, and we can start with the Chief Finance Officer Department.
Thank you. Pretty straightforward, not a very big budget. We have 25,000 in part-time. There have been times when people have been out during critical periods, whether it's the budget department or the controllers department, usually where we need temporary help then and there. 55,000 is accounting and auditing services, which is down from 23. We split with the Board of Ed. And 50,000 for training and education. We have a number of new computer systems going in. The budget department is looking at upgrading the budgeting software so that we could have interactive budget books. The controller's office is looking at the front end timekeeping system that will probably be changed, and we will require implementation and training. We've talked a lot about the tax collector and the tax assessor. We had the upgrade to Munis, but then they moved on to QDS. There's some training involved in there. And I also put this in for professional development. I think it's important that we invest in our people. Years ago, there was money in the HR department. It never was enough, and we didn't train our people, at least to my satisfaction. I want my controller staff to go to GFOA meetings or AICPA meetings. I want the budget people also to get some training professionally from the GFOA. So it's all lumped into that one category. And that's the 50,000, nothing else to talk about.
Thanks, Henry. And again, this department's down significantly year to year, so we won't beat you up too badly. But the one question I had was, on your part-time salary, you talked about the fact we've had people out, we need coverage, etc. We had coverage in FY22. We went without it in 23. You want to bring it back in 24. What broke in 23 that we need to bring it back in 24?
Well, my administrative assistant was just told that she couldn't work for the city anymore. Consequently, we're going to need temporary help in that area, at least until we replace that individual. It's stuff happens. I mean, it's not a lot of money. This is how we run, and we tend to need it. It's just hard to predict. I mean, I run 7 different departments, so often I'm paying for a different department that has a need. So it's, the $25,000 goes pretty fast.
Okay, so that part-time resource will support not just your office, but could flex to other areas of the department as needed?
I view my budget as being there for all 7 departments. So consequently, there might be there might be a need in one of the departments that reports to me. I have dollars in my budget. I'll use my budget to accommodate.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. And before we go any further, I see the mayor has joined us. Apologies, Mr. Mayor, we'll get started right on time. Anything you want to add before we go any further?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from other members of the Board of Estimate and Tax on Henry's office here? Okay, seeing none, let's move to the tax assessor.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Paul Gorman. I'm the interim assessor. This is my first time, so I will try to answer your questions as best I can. Per the memo that I received, it said to be prepared to, if your overall department budget was over 3.5% and we're at 1.39 as a total increase. I did identify a few line items that were over the 3.5%, but I leave it up to you guys to just tell me what you want to know about. Unless there's something specific.
No, just a couple educational questions to start, please,
Sure.
and looking at some of your larger line items. $25,000 in other professional services. What is that? Line 52, 58?
Yeah, I do see that. And I'll tell you the truth, I did try to find that out today and I was not able to find that out. I think that probably has to do with audits. When we audit personal property. But I was not able to track that down through Munis to see what that account was today. To be able to say, I mean, that does, but I'm pretty certain that that's the audits for other professional services.
Well, Paul, the only reason I would ask you to go double check that is if you go 2 line items above 52, 53, you've got a line item that's accounting and auditing.
Oh, I do see
services.
that. I do apologize. Okay, I can definitely get an answer on that. Unfortunately, I'm not really skilled at Munis to be able to look that up right now unless somebody knows how to walk me through that. I do apologize.
Paul, I just made a note. I can check into that. We can touch base tomorrow morning. I'll let you know what's in there.
Okay,
Yeah, just go back and look at the history of everything that was taken out of that line item and give you kind of an idea of
Right.
what it's used for.
And then, Paul, one other comment, and we've made it in every single review we've done, and I'll make it now for every single department again. There are a number of line items that look like a straight pickup from the FY23 approved budget line item. These all tend to be smaller for the most part. But what we're asking every department to do is to really look at what their FY23 actuals and forecasted actuals will be, and to assess whether that expense needs to be maintained based on actuals, not based on what was in the budget to begin with. I know you need some flexibility in your budget while things come up year over year, but it's a red flag to us in a very, very tight expense year when we see across the board or in many places up. I just picked up what I hadn't planned for last year and plopped it in again for this year. So can we go look at that? And again, there's a number of line items where that's the case inside your department.
sure. I can definitely take a look at that and review that with Tom and with Henry. Because like I said, this is new to me. And I concentrated more on the ones that only had the over and the 23 approved. I concentrated more on the ones to know answers for the things that were over 3.5%.
Yep, and fully appreciate that, really do. And again, recognize that individually, these will be small dollar amounts that we're talking about, but when we do this across every single department on the city side, it can provide a meaningful impact to the bottom line and therefore to our citizens.
Sure.
Questions or comments from other BET members for the tax assessors department?
Yeah, before we leave, do we have any explanation for the IT services, 66,000?
That is 66,000. That is I'm gonna guess it because there was nothing in the actual, but it's in the 23. I'm gonna have to say that I believe that that's probably the new contract with QDS. That would be a guess off the top of my head. Because again, I unfortunately I did not prepare this document and just found out yesterday that I had to be ready for this.
I think that basically, as Ed has said, let's go back and we'll have to take another look at this.
Yeah, I could spend some time with them tomorrow if they have time.
Yeah,
Please, Paul.
let's do that.
And again, not trying to put you on the spot and not trying to be difficult to you as the new guy. We're doing this to everybody.
No, I appreciate that. And hey, I'm a taxpayer too in another town. I understand. And I want to trim as much as I can, if at all possible. So I will pour over this for every single line item and see what we can do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, there's a
Okay.
good chance, that is QDS. I just looked at the actuals. Nothing has been spent thus far in fiscal 23, and we just switched over to them. So it's conceivable we haven't gotten an invoice from them yet.
And I'm
That makes
sorry,
sense.
and I apologize for the fact that I've been out of town all week. Is Mr. Ford not going to comment on this?
No, Mr. Ford is no longer with the city.
That explains it. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, I've been away, so I haven't been reading the papers that carefully.
Any other questions for Paul from anyone? Okay, should we move to the tax assessor reevaluation?
Paul, you're not quite off the hook yet. You got 4 more lines here.
But in light of the fact that Paul's brand new at this, should we just push this whole thing off until he gets a chance to really go through the numbers with Tom, perhaps?
Well, I think given our time frame that we've got to hit, Jim, I think we don't need to challenge on every single number, but it's the same basic message on these 4 line items, Paul. Right? Really, let's scrub these. Let's make sure we understand them. And then if you can come back to Tom with any changes, refinements, that would be appreciated.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
I'm
just to comment a little bit on the reval, most likely, most of those numbers are based on I'm hoping that most of them are based on the contracts and some estimations, because I do see supplies and materials and printing. But yeah, I'll dig into all of it with Tom tomorrow and get you guys some answers and see if there's some fat I can try.
Yeah, I think it's only fair to do that. Again, we can't put you on the spot and ask you questions.
Yep. I mean, the good news is bottom line numbers look very, very good.
Yeah.
Also.
I'm just a little concerned. What I'd like to know is fiscal 23 was 659 approved. The revised budget is 659, and they're requesting another 600 in. So is this a $1.2 million cost for the reval?
I think that's right. I think that the cost
Okay.
split between the 2 fiscal years and
Okay.
started working on the reval in the current fiscal year 23, and then it swings into 24 as well.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay. So if you guys need me for anything else, I'm available by phone or email, but I'll get out of your hair.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
All right. Should we go to the tax collectors department? And again, bottom line numbers are very good here.
Yeah, 21,000 increase over previous year, just under 2%, over 23 approved. So well within the 3.5% target, and we do have Lisa on the line this evening.
Yeah.
Good
So-
evening. Can you
Hey.
hear me?
Yes, Lisa. Absolutely.
Okay. The Assistant Tax Collector, Al Palumbo, is also, I believe, on the call. I did want to draw your attention. One thing that usually jumps out for the Board of Estimate is when we are going to be having a tax sale. We do have the 5259 professional services account that jumps significantly during the year when we have a tax sale. So originally, we had planned to have a sale this fiscal year, but because of the computer conversions and being short of staff and so we were not able to do it. So instead of July of 2023, we are most likely going to have that sale in July of 2024. and we'll start working on it in the November before. I would point out, I will look at our accounts to see what we can cut. We always give money back. We always give substantial money back this year in particular because we have had 2 vacancies. So there's going to be in the salary account, there's going to be a give back. Whatever the Board of Estimate gives us, we will use it wisely. We have the same staff that we had 25 years ago. When I came to the city, there's 8 of us full time. We're doing a lot more work than was done in the past in terms of enforcement. We do all our own enforcement, and my familiar refrain is the tax collector's office is responsible for collecting between 86 to 90% of the operating budget revenue for the city. So we're very judicious in how we spend that money. This year, we had a lot of overtime this year because of that staff shortage and also because of computer conversions. But if you have any particular questions you'd like to ask me, the only other thing I should mention that was a jump, we have 2 individuals in our division, one this year and one next year, to get their recertification. So they have to sort of cram some extra professional development hours in. It's been very hard to do that when we're short of staff. So you might see a little bit of a jump in the education or
Lisa,
conference account,
thank you.
and that would be
You do
why.
a great job as usual, as Troy. My comment is of 3 other professional service lines, 5258, 5259, 5263. One question, why are they 3 separate things? And what are those, I guess?
The 5258 is our regular professional services account. I'll start with that one. What that one is for our lockbox service during collection. We basically have a third party bank pick up our mail and process our automated payments with a OCR scan so that we don't get behind with mail. They do some other processing for us as well. Anything that we have to pay that's like that, we use that other professional services account. Some of the banks collect for us. There's fees involved with that. There's fees involved with the Department of Motor Vehicles. We report to them delinquent accounts. There's fees involved with using their system. That's what that 5258 account, the 5259 account is the one we use when we are having a tax sale. That money we get back because we charge all of the costs of the tax sale. We charge to the people whose properties are involved with the sale. So I like to think of this as seed money. We basically need it to have the title searches done. We do not do our own title searches. It's more wise to have an experienced title searcher do the search so that thing is missed. So we pay for those title searches upfront, and we bill them to the customers. Properties are involved in the sale. So all that money we will get back. The third account, the 5263, I believe that's right, because that's a new one for me.
Lisa, I could talk to this. This is mislabeled. This should be furniture.
Oh.
I'll fix that as
Okay.
we speak.
Okay. Sorry.
It was, probably a copy paste error. My apologies, but
That's okay.
nonetheless, 2,800 is in there as your request for this year if you want to address that.
I mean, we do have a very limited amount of furniture. We don't have a lot of stuff in the office, but we have 1 large copier and 4 smaller ones. We have 4 desks at the front end. We do have to have some reconfiguring done because of the new software. We're all going to need new monitors because the way this system works, that the print is very, very, very small, and none of us can see it very clearly. So that's probably what that is for.
I would just like to add, Lisa saves the city a ton of money and it doesn't show up anywhere. We're one of the very few cities that do our own tax sale. I could tell you, I've been in meetings with the mayor and Lisa when people are pitching us to hire them to do our tax sales. And Lisa and her staff handle all of that. It's a lot of work. It's done professionally, and it saves us all a lot of money.
Mhm.
So when Lisa wants 2,800 for furniture, I'm glad to give it to her because even the tax sale costs come back to us in reimbursements. And she's as thrifty as you would expect a tax collector to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Lisa, one question, and it may be driven by legal requirements, so forgive my ignorance there. But postage, printing, duplication, those are pretty big numbers. Is there a way that we can be doing more electronically there, or is it a legal requirement for hard copy information to be sent?
We do both. We do have customers that use electronic, but I will tell you this. In some towns, in fact, most towns in Connecticut, they do not do a second installment billing. They send one bill in July and they expect the taxpayers to remember to pay their second half. As a tax collector, I have always advocated to do a second installment billing because again, we're collecting, in your case, it's going to be about $400 million in revenue. For what those printing and postage costs are, it is well worth it because you're putting the bill in the taxpayer's hands. Our demographic in Norwalk likes to have that bill. If they don't get their bill by the middle of December, they're picking up the phone and they're calling us. So you might say that they've been conditioned to expect it, but what we are able to do is we are able to provide you with a collection rate, a current collection rate that is close to 99%, which for a city of 91,000 taxpayers is very, very good and very, very high. It allows you to set a lower mill rate because you know that 96 to 99% of your collectible levy is going to come in. If we were to drop it, or if for any reason it were to drop to the 94 or 95% level, you would consequently have to set a higher mill rate to still get the same amount of money in. So I look at it as a wise investment. We do use what is required by law, which is pre-sorted first-class mail. We have a printer who prints off-site. We don't print our own bills. You're talking about 85,000 tax bills. That's a lot of bills. It's a lot of pieces of mail. So we farm it out to a printer and a mail house because they have the ability to sort and stuff and fold and so forth. But I think that is wise to spend that money to put the bill into the customer's hand. Likewise, the delinquent notices that we send twice a year. If you wanted me to cut it back, I would, but I don't recommend it.
No, I appreciate the explanation and the education. Thank you very much. I don't.
A follow-up question, Lisa. Would
welcome.
it make sense to ask or the residents whether they wanted to opt in just getting things by online? So you don't have to mail, like I'd rather get my bills online on my tax bills. Is that something that you considered, or you just can't do that, or what?
We've considered it, but you know how often people change their email? I mean, the system that we have now, the vendor that we use as our online payment and what they call IVR, which is the telephone payment system, has a way for people to register their emails and get reminders and get copies of their bills and things like that. I'm very, very hesitant to give up the paper bill at this time. It's something I can look into, but the majority of our taxpayers, I think, like to get the bill. Al has worked there longer than I have. I don't know if he wants to chime in on this because he fields probably a lot more customer service issues within the division than I do. It is something we could look into, but I don't know that it would be entirely helpful because if I'm going to email them a bill and they don't get it, it bounces back, then I'm going to have to chase them down to find their new email. And how would I go about doing that? Al, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think you said it best when you said they're kind of, over the years, they've been conditioned to receive the bill, and they know if if they don't have it by the middle of June or the middle of December, we're getting the calls. Now, I mean, we do have people on occasion who say, well, could I get it by email? I mean, I'll email people bills all the time if they said they, couldn't find their original one, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what we would do if we get a lot of bounce backs, and I just don't know that we'd be able to, to find another email and then worry about, trying to get a paper bill out in the mail. I mean, once June 15th rolls around, all that extra stuff is really hard to squeeze in because you got the inline people, you're dealing with mail, you have the phones. If all of a sudden we got 500 bills that bounce back, or more, who the heck knows, because either an email changed or maybe it was entered wrong, anything like that. It's gonna be a bit of a nightmare, to try and get caught up on that.
I would also add that we do get a lot of people who use the online system who makes, in terms of their email that they enter, what their bank account is, their routing number and things like that. You would not believe how many mistakes people make with their own accounts. Technology is fabulous and we do try to use it, but it doesn't always lend itself to efficiency. If you get my meaning.
Okay, I get it. I would suggest it's not something we mess with in the budget today, but I would suggest that as we get through budget season and we get into more of our regular operations, there is an opportunity to poll, test, and learn from our constituencies in this regard. Any other comments for the
Okay.
tax collector department?
Yes, I do. Lucy, you mentioned that the $60,000 for the tax sale didn't take place. Is there any way that we can pay some of that up front this year before the end of this fiscal year and then cut that 75,000 significantly?
Well, the sale is going to be taking place in July of next year. Most of that money is going to go toward title searches, so I could probably try to assign some this year. It's just, to be honest with you, we have not had the time with this new software and the computer conversions. All of our energy has been going into the conversion, and even the delinquent collector has not been able to even run a list to try to figure out what's going to be in the tax sale. I can't promise you anything, but if that's what you would like me to do, I will try, but we're trying to predict who's going to be owing taxes next July in order to assign those title searches. So I'm not sure I can do that between now and the end of June.
When you say next year, you're talking about July 24 or 23?
July of 24. It can't be this year. If
All right,
it were this
okay.
year, we'd already be working on it last fall.
Yeah. Okay, fine, got it.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Yeah.
I
Go
have
ahead, Kendrick.
one question. I looked at the 21 to 22 advertising, and I'm just curious to see what is that 15,000 for advertising?
We are required by state law to place notices in the newspaper when we're in a tax collection period. And the purpose of that is to notify our taxpayers that their taxes are due, just in case they didn't get a bill. And it's also a way for us to try to connect with them and communicate with them and let them know, for example, that they can pay online, that they can pay over the phone, that they can walk in and pay at a bank. So the notices that we place are fairly large. They go in by law, they're required to go in 3 separate times around the time of the beginning of the collection period and around the time of the end. We also have an online ad on the Norwalk blog, Nancy on Norwalk, that we pay for, that
Lisa, does that,
allows people to click and get directly to our website where they can pay. So we think that that's kind of money well spent as well. That
I-
is
I
not
guess-
required by law. The notices in the newspaper are, but in terms of value, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Lisa, I get it. I think Kendrick's question may have been, if you look at FY 22 actuals, that number was 165. It jumped to 15,000 as planned for 23 and stays at 15,000 for 24. So what caused the jump? Is it tied to the planned tax sale? Is it that we did something wrong in FY 22?
Can you highlight it? Can you show it to me on the screen?
Yeah,
Can you highlight it?
5237.
I think,
It for me?
And I'm checking the
I-
actuals for 23 right now, Lisa.
I think that it,
a mistake.
something probably, it just didn't get rung up to the right account, I think. It probably got charged to the wrong account because we spend about the same amount every year.
Lisa, you're at 2,400 right now for fiscal 23. I'm not sure if you heard that. If I was talking over you, I'm sorry. It's
No, that's
2,400,
fine.
2,400 for fiscal 23 thus far.
Lisa, where did the tax sale, the notices for the tax sale go?
The notices for the tax sale probably come out of 5259
Okay, so
because
this-
all our tax sale stuff seems to come
Okay.
out of
Right,
it.
this is an example,
Yeah.
Lisa, where we really want you to go look at what your FY 23 actuals to date and forecast actuals would be, and adjust the numbers as appropriate for FY 24. Because if we've spent 2,400 to date in that line item, run rate would suggest we may finish the year at about 3,600, and you've got 15,000 in the plan for next year. That may be potential that we can drop to the bottom line.
Okay.
Yeah, there's something's funny going on there. We'll look at it.
Thank you. Any other questions for the tax collector's office? Okay, should we move to accounting and treasury?
All right, accounting and treasury, bottom line here, 60,000 increase over 23 approved, comes out to 5.4%. Couple of notes here on some upcoming initiatives. And we have Chitsmay and Karen joining us this evening to talk through this.
Good evening, everybody. So in the comptroller's department, we handle, the treasury function, the financial accounts payable and payroll. And we handle for both the city and the Board of Ed and retirees also. So with our wages and salary, I know you're looking at the actual of FY 22. We are, short staffed and we're down about 3 positions. So we want to budget for those 3 positions for FY 24. We didn't fill those positions quite yet, just because we're in the process of realigning our own processes, training our current staff, investing more in our training and education. As you can see in the education line, and as our CFO mentioned earlier, in our, I think another line item, as you see in other professional services, we were looking into upgrading our time and attendance system, but we did put a halt on our RFP process at the moment. So if you're looking to reduce where we could save on the budget, I think we could probably reduce that $22,000 increase. As we're putting on a hold, we're just investing more into the current year training of our employee, of our system. And so that way we're more efficient before we continue with this looking into a time and attendance.
So Chitsumay, if we push off researching a new timekeeping system, does anything break Or is it just that would have been a nice to have and we can live with our current timekeeping system for another year?
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to invest more in the education and training of the system. So, I mean, our current time system is working. We know that we want to fill our payroll supervisor to assist with that process, in addition to our current payroll staff that we have.
Okay, thank you. That being the case, I would strongly recommend that we take that 22,000 and out of the budget and move it to the bottom line. Okay,
Yeah, let me just say, can I just ask another question on that? That the $78,000 for that timekeeping system is the same as it's been for the last 3 years. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we pay for user costs and maintenance costs. And it runs about 78,000 each year.
Okay. So the 22,000, what would that get us on that system? Would that give us any efficiencies at all?
Well, we were looking to upgrade the system, like a time and attendance system, and we built this in addition to the regular maintenance that we were paying. But because we're putting a hold on it, that we don't need that additional 22,000 for fiscal
so
year.
that was to research a new system, correct?
Correct, correct.
Right,
So-
so I'm,
Well, but
So, Can I
really
just finish my thought here? Is that what would be the upside of upgrading that system?
But right now, I know our system doesn't integrate perfectly with our payroll system. So we use a separate system that cuts the checks, that makes the payment. This time and attendance system only, it keeps track of people's accrual, which is their sick, vacation, and also their time. So we were looking to see if there was another system out there that could integrate seamlessly with our current payroll system.
So is there some thought in your mind that we could achieve some savings by implementing those more stringent controls that you would have under that enhanced system?
Possibly, that's why we went out to look for that time and attendance system.
understood. However, again, in a year where there is must-haves and nice-to-haves, since you may have said the current system is working, this is something I would strongly recommend that we push out to the following fiscal year.
Ed, I would disagree a little
What
bit.
I,
I would disagree a little bit. Chitsame, we're looking at this system. This is a budget for 6 to 18 months from now. I know we put a hold on the RFP now, currently, immediately, but I fully expect us to get a new system next fiscal year, 6 to 18 months from now, and we're going to need those $22,000. Regarding the benefit, Ed, it's working, but there are inefficiencies. It causes a lot of manual interventions because system to system doesn't work as smoothly as it should. So what we're doing is we're looking at the workflows, we're looking at how we process payroll, who does what role. And as we sort through that, we're then going to go back out and get a front-end timekeeping system. So I really think we need this 22,000 in the budget.
I appreciate that, Henry. I appreciate the potential for savings, but if this is, at this point, this is research to find out if those things can happen. At least that's how I understand it.
No, maybe it was a misspoken. We need a new front-end system. We needed to integrate with the Munis payroll system. And we put off the RFP simply because we didn't do our homework yet with workflows. Once we finish that work, we're going to go out and get a new front-end timekeeping system.
I concur with Henry. I think that, you know, to cut something like this now, and will just kick the can down the road.
No, that's all it's doing, Jim, is kicking the can down the road. I will fully
Right.
admit that, but it
And-
was in
and
the
I-
spirit of, is it a nice to have or a must have? Henry's
I think it's a-
explained it differently than it is written and or I understood it earlier. So that's okay.
I would say, you know, Shitsune said it's working. It is. We get the payroll out every payroll, and there seems to be a payroll every week for different parts of the city and the Board of Ed. However, the problem with the computer system to computer system interface causes a lot of required manual intervention, checking on potential errors, making sure that both systems have the same data and that they are in agreement at all times. By changing the front-end system that meshes seamlessly, we will reduce A, the potential for errors, and B, the amount of manual intervention and time that is being done on our payroll. So to me, it's a must. It's just, instead of getting it started in fiscal '23, I expect it to come in the third quarter. When you say July, August, September, third quarter of the calendar year, that we will be out there looking at computer systems. And I think $22,000 is pretty small to get that kind of correction.
Okay.
I would concur with that. I think that sounds like it's money well spent in comparison to some of the other line items that we've seen in other departments. I think this is relatively small.
Then I'll back off. I'll defer to the prevailing opinion of the board and let's keep it in.
Thank you.
I do have one other question, and I probably should have asked this, not just in your case, Chitsume, but in the case of anybody who's looking to hire. I fully understand that we cannot start the hiring process until the start of the fiscal year once the budget is approved. But for the additional resource that you want to add in FY24, given the skill, given the requirement, how long do you think it will take us to fill those positions? And again, I'm thinking nickels and dimes, but if you put this in at a 12-month budget plan for salary, and it's going to take us 2 to 3 months to hire these people, is there a way to reduce the increase to reflect the reality of time on board for FY24?
Well, we
My
have.
question
the-
makes sense?
Yes, but we do have the budget in fiscal year '23. We're looking to go out in like around June. So I think we will need that full budget for the whole fiscal year '24.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair then. It was just a thought of if it was new headcount budget for '24, would we be able to have a full 12-month run rate of that headcount?
Ed,
That's fair.
One of Chitsume's senior people accepted a job in another department in the city. So it was sort of our loss is their gain. So we know about the vacancy and we've been working with HR to get that position filled.
Okay. Okay, again, not trying to challenge too hard, just trying to be creative if it was a net new position for '24. Any other questions on accounting and treasury? Okay, maybe we should move to the next department, management and budget.
It's me. You can
Oh,
see.
then forget it, Tom. You get no money.
All right, so moving on. Just kidding. Increase of 54,000, that's about 17% over the 23 ask, and I can speak to that. The vast majority of the impact is up here. Just to give you a little bit of history, prior to my arrival, there was a budget director and a budget analyst. But years before that, there was a budget director and an assistant director in place. So when I came on board, Henry had indicated that we would go through the budget process so I could learn what type of skill set would best fit in my department. So as we moved along, we were very, very fortunate to find an experienced municipal candidate who was familiar with our systems, and that ended up being an assistant director role, not an analyst role. So a bit of an increase over what we had originally budgeted for 23 to accommodate for the difference in those job titles. So that's why we're over what you see as what we call a normal salary increase.
Mhm.
So that 311 is enough to cover the two folks on our team now, myself and Agnes.
Okay.
Other than that, on the wages and part-time, we made a decision to shift the part-time grants coordinator salary into my area. Right now, that is in Henry's area. So we'll probably be coming to you later on this year to do a budget transfer to cover that difference between the part-time salary and the amount that was budgeted up there. So that's that part, and the rest of them are relatively small. Membership and dues, that's for something called the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, which is sort of the trend and guidance committee nationwide for municipal finance folks. And that's about the only big one. The other professional services for us is the GFOA budget book award. So you're probably familiar with the publication. Well, when we put out our budget book, we put in a page announcing that we won the GFOA budget award. Well, lo and behold, that's not free. And the amount to apply for that award goes in this line right here.
Okay.
And then everything else is relatively static.
Tom, what is the machinery equipment rent line, 5294?
Yeah, that's the large copier that we have here in our area. And as you can well imagine, seeing all of those budget books, we do a lot of printing.
And it seems, just like we've said earlier, it seems like it's similar to previous years, a lot of these numbers. So, okay.
Yeah, and then just on seminars and conferences, GFOA has conferences. There's an organization called CCM, Connecticut Council of Municipalities, that has a conference. Obviously, those things fell by the wayside during COVID. None of those happen to be on our radar right now. So if pressed for an area to give up a little bit, that might be one to look at.
Okay. Any other questions for Tom's budget? All right, let's go ahead and move to purchasing.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I did have one question. On the central services budget, I see central printing service. Is there any thought to consolidating printing services? What triggered that was your comment about how much printing you do. Does it make sense to centralize that someplace?
Actually, that falls under purchasing. It's not budget management and budgets. Central
yeah.
services falls under purchasing.
And what makes that up, Sharon? What type of activity is in there?
Let me look at my notes here. Oh, it's the envelopes and forms that we use to mail out the purchase orders.
Okay, so it's not related to a finance-wide or citywide function.
No.
Okay.
Well,
So we have forms for records management. That's basically the forms that we need to use to send boxes down to storage, call them back up. There's pre-printed forms that we use.
So all those central services part of purchasing.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so let's go back up to Tom's and close that out. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, you survived another year, Tom.
Thank you.
All right. so
Well, we are we going to take the 2,000 from him for the conferences?
I would suggest, yes, Tom, we do that. And if those conferences do come back, we can, and we want to send somebody, we can take it out.
We can all chip in.
Now I can say I gave two.
There you go.
All right.
right.
On to purchasing, and we started with Sharon, and now we will go back to Sharon. a 4.2% increase, but dollar wise, seems very reasonable within the context of her full budget. Sharon, you want to address anything
Sure.
in particular here?
I know we had some changes of increase in the purchasing office area. So the good news, little background, we have a purchasing officer on board. So some of those changes that you see that we have increases like the subscriptions, the memberships, that is due to having another person come on board. So now we're fully staffed. So we need another bonfire seat for so they can help facilitate all the solicitation process. And then the memberships that our purchasing department belongs to, like NIGP, the Purchasing Association of Connecticut. So it's adding that another person. And then also in November, I verified all the fees to see what kind of cost increases were going to happen in our next fiscal year. So I'm pretty, unfortunately, everything has gone up in this world. I did look while you were discussing about prior year's actual and seeing where we had little spend and we're still budgeting for it. I also looked at the post office, the PO box, and unfortunately that cost has increased. So when we did the budget, our cost for the PO box was $1,720. It's now gone up to $1,960. So I know in like training and education and office supplies, we try not to spend a lot of money on office supplies, but that will help offset our postage.
Got it.
Everybody's okay with that.
Yep.
Is that actually a post office box or is that posted?
No, post office
Why
box
do we have a post office box?
for all
Doesn't
the invoices and that everything.
Yeah,
It's the
why-
PO box for the city.
So that's the one box for the city that you pay for?
Yep.
Okay.
And Sharon, can you just educate me on the advertising line item? What are we advertising there?
Sure, not a problem. Per the purchasing guideline, we must advertise every public RFP and bid in the newspaper.
Thank you.
So we run 80 to 100 plus solicitations a year. So it goes in the hour. And then if we are accepted funds from the state, certain agencies require us to do 2 newspapers. So one like this, the Hour, and the other one is the Hartford Courant or Stanford Advocate, where you have a broader reach of audience.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the purchasing office?
I just wanted to add, Sharon's one of our closet techies. And I forget the statistic, but it's something like she and 2 staffers handled the tripling of volume over the last 3 or 4 years because she focused on Bonfire and the software did a lot of the heavy lifting. But finally, they added someone this year. And I just wanted to point out that's a 33% increase in personnel for Sharon. So she should probably be good for the next 10 years with the productivity she normally gets. But we're just thrilled that the cavalry has arrived, and between additional arms and legs of a very experienced purchasing agent, combined with the efficiencies we get from Bonfire, they do an amazing quantity and quality of job with very limited resources.
Okay.
Thank you, Henry.
All right.
So and then central services, as we highlighted before, that's under purchasing. So the big significant increase that we've seen for prior years is the mailroom services, which is the professional services account. So in 2022, we went out and issued a RFP for the centralized mailroom services. So this is the staff that goes to the post office, picks up on the mail, sorts it, distributes to all the departments, all the buildings. So it's a 3-year contract with 2 optional years. So that is the contract obligation. It's not a quote.
Okay, so that is contractually obligated.
Sharon, could you, excuse me, Ed, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine.
Could you talk a little bit about electricity, heating oil, and those kinds of purchases? I know I sat in on some discussions with you in negotiations.
Mhm.
Although it doesn't show up in the purchasing department, you're purchasing on behalf of the whole city and then it gets allocated. Could you just update the BET on what we've done to try to limit those costs?
Sure. As we know, it's been quite volatile, especially the past year. So electricity, we are under contract with Constellation Energy till December 2020. Sorry. Yes. I don't have all the timeframes for all our when the obligations are ending. So somewhere in 2024, same with natural gas is, I believe in 2024. So those contracts, we were been able to contain a lot of those costs, gasoline and diesel. We've been going on a annual basis for our supply. So the other factors on gasoline and diesel is good example, it's been a mild winter. So because of that, we're not using a lot of diesel in our trucks, or we're not using a lot of home heating oil and heating our buildings. So so every year we look at where we've been spending, how much volume and usage we've gone in the previous years, and we try to make the best smart decision on how much to procure for a forward year. So the good thing is we've been able to mitigate some of the volatility that other municipalities have been experiencing on electricity and natural gas. So, but again, what goes up goes down. So it's you know, it's not a perfect formula, but so far we've been doing okay on that.
If folks, I want to get in, I apologize. I have to go to my common council meeting, so I'm going to leave the meeting here tonight. So again, thank you for all your hard work and really getting that knife out and finding where we can make some good cuts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other questions for Sharon?
Sharon, maybe
Yeah.
it's Ann Yang. Maybe at some point of time at a later meeting, we could go through some more of the contracts, but just out of curiosity, what have you locked in for the rate for electricity with Constellation?
I don't have that number in front of me. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to discuss
Oh,
that,
no.
but we can circle back with you after this meeting.
That's fine.
That's okay with you.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
It's not your fault, Sharon. Henry put you on the spot.
That's okay.
It's better up to shine.
Any other questions for Sharon? All right, shall we move to IT services then?
Yep, so IT services here, increase of 270,000 over 23 approved, just under 10%. This is the one and only headcount item we will be discussing this evening, and it happens to fall in IT services. And I believe we have Joyce on the line. There she is. And
good evening, everyone. So IT services really covering for citywide. Start from police, fire, public safety, health department, library, internal support, and public facing software. So I probably for this budget, I want to focus on the two big items I have. One is IT software, another is IT cybersecurity. So as you can see, this year we have a big jump of $190,000 just to the IT software. Besides of a 5 to 10% of the contractual increase of the software, we also add a little bit more software from other departments. for example, for City Works, this is our work order system that's for the DPW. This year we upgrade to enterprise license. So now we have unlimited license for the whole entire city. This software is not just for DPW, it's for planning and zoning, customer service, is for code enforcement, is for police and fire. And this is a click and request on our website that a resident click, and take a picture and it requests the work order and going to the DPW. So it's an upgrade, $35,000 for an enterprise license. So I'm just give you, this is one example. And for IT, for IT, we have annual cybersecurity assessment. I put in to the cybersecurity, that's $18,000. We used to put in the capital budget for as a cybersecurity item, but by our insurance company that they suggest we should have an annual cybersecurity assessment to throughout the whole city, including the both libraries. So that is another item we're adding on for the annual assessment. Then the rest of it is like, for example, most of the software we have now is a subscription base. So basically it's by per seat, per person. So if city hiring, even if a grant hire, if a part-time hire, they need to have an email, they will need to have a certain kind of software license that we supported. So those are also contribute the percentage jump on the IT software. Yeah, that's about, yeah. Oh, by the way, like for the hardware that we are adding, like for example, this year we are going to, for adding all the 12 access point for the fire station. So they want to have a Wi-Fi access point refresh. The last time we have a refresh probably is when the fire station headquarters was built. So that's an additional money we're adding on to our budget. So other than this expenses, most of the time it's just a little bit 3% increase or 5% increase on the previous, given the demand and supply hardware and software, they are all jumping up through the roof. I just have a software vendor told me that next year it will be 16% jump because for the longest time they didn't increase their price. But they're probably looking around, that's what everybody's doing. So they are just like, giving me a notice by next year, that's going to be the jump. So little by little, everything adding together, that's why we have the contribution of all the price increase on this two items. Another thing I want to point it out also is the telephone service. You can see there is a drop of $43,000 because the last year I see, like I kind of following the previous director's footstep and putting everything into, I didn't move anything around. But this year I just looking at the, I try to start moving things around to say, well, this item shouldn't be in telephone category. It should be moving into the IT software. So that's also another, contribution of the price jump on these two items that we have.
Okay, thank you, Joyce.
You're welcome.
Questions for Joyce on IT services?
This is Ann. One comment first is that I think it's extraordinary what you do with a fairly modest budget, and given the importance of what you do. And my question is, do you have enough resources to make sure that the city remains safe relative to some of these ransomware attacks that have happened to other cities?
Yes, thank you so much, Anne, for asking that question. For the longest time, if you follow the Eversource of the efficiency study, IT is really grossly understaffed. And last year, we are very lucky. We for the longest time, we have only one network engineer. And so we are like more like in the defense mode. Everything we are just like, okay, we try to patching stuff. And last year we are hiring a junior network personnel. We have a network team. You know, anytime when you have a team working together, it's the things change. Like instead of defense, now we can really allocate the time and resource to really looking into what we have right now and how to we improving our infrastructure and improving our cybersecurity, lower our cybersecurity risk by working with the team. Now we are not in defense mode, but more like we are in the planning mode. So the longest time, we have one headcount for each, basically. Then and everybody's trying to hold the sky by ourselves. So you will see that in this year's budget, I put in a little bit more on the $5,000 actually in the IT professional services. Those are also the thing. Well, IT have a habit. We try to hold in, which we think we can learn everything by ourselves. Actually, then a lot of the time, giving the very limited resource, sometimes we just need to say, okay, this part I really need some professional help. Right. So those are the hours, the $5,000 is the hour we are trying to, if we run into something like what required us, 2 days to figure it out. But if I call this service guy or it's consulting firm, they probably can point it out and immediately fix the issue for us. So I'm trying to slowly introduce the professional service into our budget just to make sure we have enough support. Yeah, but slowly we are going to like this year we're adding a junior programmer. Actually, we have one programmer that is a DBA, database administrator plus programmer for the whole entire city. That this person is handling the public facing software, the one you're looking for, the resident pass, the new agency meeting board, all this software is coming from one person. So we try to make a team for introduce a junior engineer, junior programmer to make a team to become a programming team. In this programming team, then we can handle more data converting, automation, and we can working on even sometimes even training for other department regarding to, sometimes it's just, some people just, staff just need a little bit training. Sometimes it's just once we pointed out, we try to teach people fishing, but not, teaching, not giving them the fish. That's our, so I felt like we are lack of that area that, I would like to have some people, a staff that, in charge of training and, in charge of the, program development, and in charge of looking for, sometimes the support for all the citywide, and sometimes could be training on Excel, training how to use the Outlook, training how to do Power BI, all this other, services. But that's kind of, jack of all trade kind of position, but we'll slowly get to that point.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. And I would just encourage you to think about if you do need any other resources. The most important thing is making sure that the city remains safe against any of these lockout ransom attacks, because the last thing one would want to be accused of is being penny wise, pound foolish if we end up with some kind of disaster like that, which is not out of the question.
Right. So I think under Henry, under the our division, there is a CISO position. It's budgeted. We just never we posted once, but we didn't find any good candidates. But I think that CISO position is, well, we're trying to holding the the sky for everything, but it's just I feel like there is a profession, job. It's like, requires certain people to do, looking at our cybersecurity measurement, just looking overall for city and Board of Education side and setting up policy, overlook all this procedures and, and so I think that's a position we definitely need to have it, put it back out on the market. We have post a job out there. We used to only have 20 candidates. This year we have more than 100. I feel this is a market that we can take advantage of, finding a good cybersecurity person that to help us to, fine tuning our cybersecurity environment.
Right. So
Thank you.
we can talk more about that when we get to the CISO department.
Okay.
Just where we stand on that. Any other comments on IT services before we move off of that?
Yes, I had a question regarding IT software, cybersecurity. Are RFPs sent out to the service providers? It seems like you said, the cost of these services just increased year to year, and they just tell you, 16% there's going to be an increase. Are we, negotiating, competing with different service providers just to get a better price on the cost of software, hardware, and cybersecurity?
For the cybersecurity, we do not currently have a contractual service with anybody. So it's the software that is killing us. It's the percentage of the price jump of the software, and most of it there are. We are satisfied with the service. We are satisfied with the software. It's just like some of the software they haven't jumped the price for 3 or 4 years, and suddenly you say, hey, so last 3-4 years I didn't have any price increase, and this year we are going to do this, right? And we are going to give a price jump. So it kind of caught off guard the last minutes. So most of the time, if we are happy with the service, and we probably will pay for the fee to stay. But if sometimes we feel like we're already not happy with the service, we probably will do, put together RFP and say that's, looking for other services that we have that on the market that will serve us better with a lower price.
I would also point out, Kenrick, it's not similar to buying goods and services, let's say for the Department of Public Works. There's a tremendous switching cost when you change vendors and you change software. So in many other cases, when someone says I'm increasing by 15%, we would just go out, do another RFP because all the goods are fungible and it doesn't matter. When you have software, you've invested in the software, in training people, in getting used to those systems, customizing it for the city. You can't just change on a drop of a hat, even with an RFP. So I think Joyce tends to get 3 to 5 year contracts. That's what we do citywide. We'll have a 3-year contract and then +1 at our option. Price increases are built into that contract so that they can't just surprise us. But there are dozens, if not hundreds of these contracts. And we do the best we can. Trust us when we say we're not happy when a vendor just surprises us and says, oh, by the way, we're increasing your cost. So we're very aware of that. And when we do the contracts and when we do the RFPs, we try to lock people into a reasonable price increases as part of the whole contract.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And any other questions here before we move to GIS?
Yeah, on the subject of software again, Joyce, are these the $1,018,000? Is that several contracts or several licenses, I should say?
$1,018,000. Actually, we have more than 60 of the software that under managed by IT. Some of the department they might like for fire department. We just last year they did the RFP for their Adashi, which is their document management system for the firehouse. So this is when they do the RFP. After that, the RFP. Well, no, capital money covering the first year. Then after the second year, they they hand it over to IT to do the maintenance, or to pay for the contractual fee after that. The reason is because IT is basically, we have a very intense onboarding, offboarding process. We know who comes and who goes, right? So when they handing over us the software, lots of time, if that's a subscription base, we can allocate the account to somebody else. So that's why in the end, instead of they have their own IT software, they kind of handing over to IT. So you are going to see IT software getting grow bigger and bigger, because nobody really want to really maintain. They just want to have user software. But when it comes to the contractual in the invoices to negotiate with a better price, or to adding additional functionality, they would like IT to handling that for them.
When it comes to IT software, I'd much rather have you handle it than the fire department. But I guess my question was, are any of those licenses capitalizable?
No, every single one of it is after capitalized, and this all operational. Some of it is also either under contract, or is a subscription based by annual, or is by So all of them are their operating budget.
So even the enterprise software that you've gotten is almost on a subscription basis, as opposed to like a 5-year contract?
The enterprise is the license we are adding together. Actually, is an extension contract added on top of this.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So it's amendment. It's amendment. Yeah.
Henry, you look like you wanted to make a comment.
There were a couple. Jim, to your last point, accounting has changed. So all leases are operating leases now, where you have to set that up. And we did a lot of that in last year's audit, which hits me. What I did want to add is that there's been a combination, my trio of Joyce, Sharon, and Darren Callahan in legal. And what we said is, we have to be tighter on cybersecurity. And part of this was we inherited a silo mentality here. When I walked in 4 years ago, everybody did their own thing. There wasn't enough centralization. So we funneled all purchasing through Sharon with RFPs, but we went further. Joyce helped develop a questionnaire. This is now part of every RFP regarding cybersecurity. And she gives an assessment before a vendor is selected, which says green light, they have good security, red light, we don't let them inside our network, and yellow, it might be more restricted. Okay, then when we get to the contract process, and Darren, we have an addendum, just like we have an insurance rider, we now have a cybersecurity rider that says you will maintain these certifications. If you get breached, you have an obligation to tell us in a certain time. So what's happening is we get more and more of the city coming through Sharon and Joyce. We're watching for cybersecurity because a lot of breaches in the last 2 years were through outside software. There was a breach in a software company and somebody was using that to access our network. So it's one of the ways we try to keep ourselves safe. And then I'll go back to Joyce's last point, very important. The centralization of those software licenses allows Joyce and the IT department to support them and then turn them on and off with the credentials for who should have access. Very, very important. We've had problems historically, 5 years and before, where we weren't sure who had access to the software. Different departments had their own software running off. So this has helped all sorts of situations on multiple levels.
Well, along those same lines, can I ask this question too? Joyce mentioned before that the telephone line included other things than telephones, which she weeded out. Do we allow other departments to go buy their own hardware, desktops, laptops, etc.?
No, actually, everything is procured by IT department. So IT have a help desk ticketing system. Anybody want to do any software, even for the installation, we didn't allow people to do on their own, buying software and do the installation by their own. So it's tightly controlled by IT. Hardware, because we are contract with Dell, so we have the best, government price with Dell. So monitor, big item, right? Monitor, desktop, laptop. Now, now everybody have the need to have the Zoom or team meeting. Now webcam become one of the some equipment that we are procuring too. And now everybody is using multiple monitors. Some, it's kind of standard for lots of the workers that they are looking at, at Excel spreadsheet, or they are looking at a big, they require bigger monitor, 2 monitor to enhance their work ability. So IT try to we try to encourage people do the work, right? We try to encourage them do a better work by providing a bigger monitor, a better computer. We're also joking about every 30 seconds people look at a screen waiting for open a file. That's the money losing for the city. So equipment, we don't want to. And if you're looking at a very small monitor, blurry, and it's hurt your eyes, that's not what we want to do. So we try to compensate a lot by providing a better equipment for people to use. Yeah.
Okay.
So no,
I'm sorry. Where does the expense sit? Does that sit in your budget, or would it be in? So I wanted a new laptop, or I wanted a new desktop. Would that sit in my budget, or would that be in your budget?
That'll be in my budget. When we procure the hardware, IT install the monitoring software, right? So those are for cybersecurity purpose. So those software monitor anytime you log in, log out. So those are controlled by us. So any procurement about laptop, computer, even for iPad, right? That or phone, right? Phone is provided by purchase department. But the phone come to IT, and if that's office phone, we install the monitoring software on top of those phones.
So your IT hardware is $12,500. That can't possibly cover all laptops and everything else.
No, those are the keyboard, mouse, webcam, any little tiny things that you can think about.
So
could be cable.
Where are the laptops?
I think Joyce misspoke, Jim, because if we look at all the other departments we reviewed, they were all carrying their IT equipment costs there. If they were under $5,000, they were in this budget. And Henry, correct me if I'm wrong, but if they're over 5,000, it's capital that it sits within, correct?
I think that what we've decided is most of the cost is less than $5,000.
Right, so it sits in the individual department operating
It
budget.
might be in individual departments. Joyce gets her budget materials first and comes last because she has to talk to every single department to find out what they have, what they need, and builds her budget based on that.
Right.
When it comes to laptop, computer, that is a capital because that have a 5 years and 3 to 5 years life. And so anything you see here is just little tiny things that, people come.
It's peripherals.
Yes.
Okay.
So
I want to be cognizant of time and our focus here.
I understand that. But I just want to make sure that there are not other departments that are buying IT hardware or software that Joyce does not know about.
Well, every year when we doing the operating and capital with with every department. So they are happy. They are really happy to hand over the budget to let us, taking in charge of that, in charge of the budget. So we try our best to to get connect with every department. And like Henry said, we also work with purchasing department. So every time there is any big item that, Sharon would know. So we work very close together that, and anytime we see something, I'll let her know. So that's, that's kind of, we work together, and no contract will be passing, Darren, which is the corporate counsel. So like Henry said, we work as a triangle, we work as a, as a team.
Okay.
Yeah,
I got it.
try our best, but still have something will fall through the crack.
Okay,
Okay, good.
thank you, Joyce. Can we move to GIS, please?
Sure. GIS is still under IT department. So I'm just going to focus on the big item that I have here is other repair maintenance. That's at $19,550. So this is actually is for the services that we would like, because GIS, we have Azure as our GIS software. We talk with Azure, quarterly to make sure we are on top of everything. That what do they have out there? What's the, what kind of software, our add-on function that we have. So this actually we are adding this because they also be a consulting service. We would like to having them. Sometimes we only have one GIS person. This GIS person is called GIS analysis and coordinator. She can do a lot of things, but lots of the time there's too many departments now require GIS services. So I just putting this number in just instead of we doing a project, which is impossible for us, one person doing all the GIS project, sometimes we can contract the Azure and the consulting firm to help us working on some of the bi-hourly. Yeah. So like I said, it could take us 2 weeks to figure out how to do this. By consulting firm, they come in, they just say, oh, I did this before for other town. Here it is. So that is the allocated amount we allocate. This is wishful thinking. I would love to have it, but if for it's not needed, well, to me, I feel it's needed. But if that's some money I can give away for some of the money that from this category.
So that's the 19,550 number you're talking about, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that assumes basically contracted help to respond to GIS issues throughout the year, which we have not done to this point in time.
No.
Having not done that to this point in time, right, I understand that there is benefit in terms of speed of response. I understand that there is benefit in terms of overall support for the city, but has it been a problem the way we have been operating thus far, Joyce? What are the issues and what are the impacts to the city of the way we've been operating thus far?
Right. So for the longest time, city probably 2 years. The city do not. Oh, we lost our GIS analyst, so we're looking, for one. And last year we finally got a very good GIS analyst that is working for us. Now it's like it opened up our eye. Like, this person now reach out to all the department. Like I've said before, we were in defense mode. Now we can really reach out to all the other department. Then, then requests from other department just coming so many requests coming out, say, hey, can I utilize GIS to do this? Can I utilize GIS to do that? As an IT department, we felt like I can see the needs is increasing. It's just like we can say, okay, we take this order, but you are not getting it the next year. Or we can just say, hey, you know what, I can get some help services and they can fix it, or they can, make it happen right away. So yeah, so those are so if you said before, because we never fully utilized GIS. Right now, it's like we are starting using it. Yeah. So that's why I want to put together some money to make sure that the needs there, and IT will have at least some outside support to help us
So is there a potential to maybe compromise here and instead of increasing that by 19,550, maybe start by increasing it by $10,000, see what the utilization rate is, what the burn rate on that number is, and then midway through the year, if we feel we need more and it's valuable, we can take additional money out of contingency.
I think that's a good plan.
So let's
So
take that
Joyce-
number down
Mhm.
by 9,550 and make the year-to-year increase 10,000.
Thank you so much. And another one is a business expense. You can see we put $25,000 in it. The thing is, if you look at everybody's operating budget, when they come to training, it's for training for their own department. It's not for training throughout the whole entire, So this year, we would like to put in the GIS training program that will help, the whole other department, every department. Almost 80% of the department is using GIS. So we would like to help as a citywide training program. And instead of each department have their own, we just like doing this together. It could be a instructor led program, training, or it could be sometimes we send them to the webinar training, or sometimes it could be just like have internally we come up have discussion, or so that can be something that's also as wishful thinking. I just want to put this as a starter, but if you I would happy if we can start with $5,000 to start.
So again, I would think that we want to look at piloting our training, seeing what we learn and what success we see out of that, and then expanding it from there. So I might suggest that we do exactly what you say. Instead of taking it up by 23,000, take it up by 5,000, do a pilot training program, see what the results are, and then make a determination as to how quickly we want to scale it, and potentially, if we need to do it within the fiscal year, take that out of contingency as well.
Thank you so much. I just want to point out another one, when we have the GIS, by the software for GIS, like for example, for the aerial imagery, not just city utilize that. We have unlimited license we are share with Board of Education. So because for Board of Education, sometimes they just looking into the GIS, helping it will help them to collect some information they would like to. So that's also it's a joint kind of so any money we spend on GIS, both city and GIS and Board of Education will be having benefit on any of the things we are spending on GIS.
Okay.
So
Any other
could I
questions?
just ask a question on the training, Joyce? Rather than just cut it and do it on a trial basis, could we just delay the training possibly for 6 months? And then just take the 10,000, and that would be it for the year. I'm just concerned that I think training is very, very important. I think the consultant for GIS is very, very important. And I'm a little apprehensive about reducing some of those expenses, because I think Joyce hit the nail on the head earlier on, saying that she wants to teach people how to fish, not sell them fish or give them fish. So the more that people in the city know how to use the systems, the less time that the IT professionals have to take time away from what they're doing to help them. So, I mean, is it just, can we just delay that training 6 months or just a few months and then just go right into it?
That's where, Jim, based on my experience, I would disagree with you a little bit on that and say, let's get the training module right. Let's make sure it all works and then scale it out. I've seen that in every professional organization I've been part of. So that's kind of my view on it. So
Okay. I guess we
that's
can
why I go
disagree.
that
We
way.
can disagree on it.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Any question regarding to the GIS?
No. The Chief Information Security Officer. And I think you started to talk to this earlier, Joyce. This is that role we really want to fill ASAP to help us from a cyber perspective, correct?
Yes, actually, this item is under Henry, so it's, I don't know, Henry, you might want to take,
I'd be happy.
take lead on this position.
We've been trying to get a CISO for 3 years. That's why the salary number is 154,769, because it's gotten 3 step increases every year. 150,000 was low when we started. As you can imagine from the real world, the supply of good CISOs is limited. The demand is extraordinary. The prices are through the roof. And we haven't at all been successful. And the commitment and the desire to fill the seat just isn't there. And so that's where we are. I think realistically, if you cut this back to 150,000 without all the additional budget items, it would be fine. I don't see them being hired July 1st. And without renewed commitment, I'm not sure I see anybody getting hired in fiscal 24. We almost have to rethink it.
Yeah.
So it is very important. And that's why I led the charge 3 years ago to get this funded and to try to get someone hired. And it just hasn't gone anywhere.
And Henry, have we done any type of fair market analysis on the salary level for a role like this?
I've spoken to headhunters to try to help us. And they said 150,000, you're lucky if you get a CISO light, somebody who hasn't really done it but is ready to step up. But
Yeah,
that's reality. We need a commitment, and I've just been here for 3 years and we haven't done anything, and I feel it's a concern.
No, I know, right? And this is another one of those areas of, this is where I will agree with another comment Jim and Ann made earlier on penny wise, pound foolish, right? Do we have a sense of, to be competitive in the marketplace, what that salary level would need to be to attract the right talent?
I don't know. Maybe HR does, but I do not.
I mean, because we're in no man's land with $154,000. To your point, we're not going to attract the type of talent we want. But I have no idea on the public sector side whether that number needs to double or not, right? And we really ought to, we ought to, as a team, decide what is the real required investment to bring in the talent that is required, and is that something that we should invest more heavily in? Right, so I'm not giving you an answer, but I'm saying I tend to agree with you. At 150K, we're fooling ourselves that we're going to get the talent we need. I just don't know what that number really needs to be to attract talent, and can we budget for a higher number here? Comments from others?
My only comment would be that we don't know right now, but maybe in 6 months, we're not going to hire somebody if we can't get it at 150 anyway. So, maybe 150 on an annualized basis, we can make it up if we hire somebody at 160 after 6 months. But we could go 9 months, or we could go 10 months and not hire anybody.
Yeah, I think what we need to do, and whether we work with HR or we use other means, I think we need to get a better sense of what the salary range needs to be to attract the talent we want. So, Henry, I might suggest we ring fence this number right now, do that type of outside salary analysis, and determine based on that whether we keep this in the budget or whether we increase it. Is that a fair way to
I don't
approach
know
this?
what kind of study we could do in time to change the numbers before we finalize the budget.
I mean, I think I'm not looking for a major study here, right? I mean, I think we could go talk to 3-4 headhunters in this space and find out what the going rate for CISOs is these days. I can give it to you.
HR to do that. That's what they do. They're
Yeah.
supposed to find out what the prices are and whether our salaries are competitive.
Yeah, I would simply ask them to go do that work again and see if they come back with this number, then it's a deeper conversation. Because again, I know on the private sector side, this number is low by 100 to 150,000 to going rate for that type of role in the private sector. I mean, the firm I work for, we outsource people into these levels as part of what we do, and it's a $300,000 job. Right, so I would let's see if we could get HR to find out for us in the next week or so, and see then what kind of decision we can make as to whether it makes sense to keep this number in here, scrape more money together to make it competitive, or get rid of it altogether.
Okay, I'll send that letter to HR.
Anybody disagree with my thinking there?
Well, I would leave it in until we learn something different.
Yeah, I'm not taking it out tonight, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm just
No,
saying.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm just agreeing with you.
Yeah, I'm agreeing also. And I don't think it's going to take hard to get a market or get a price range that makes sense, but I would not take it out.
Yeah, not yet.
I concur too.
Okay. All right, so Henry, we're trying to help, but we got to get it to a number that's meaningful that you can recruit proper talent on.
I appreciate that. I will send the request and let's see what happens.
Okay. All right, shall we move to grants?
Yeah, so we've got representatives from each of these areas. My proposal is to go in order that we have them listed on the screen. So that would be the Transit District. I do believe that Matt Pence is on the line. Flat request compared to 2023, and I see Matt on the screen. Thanks for your patience and take it away.
Yeah, no problem. Good evening, everybody. As you can see, I'm submitting for a flat budget from prior year. Just quick highlights. We have 3 issues. Number 1 is accumulated debt that we've been working on for years to pay down. It went from 3.3 million to about 525,000 in the past 5 years. So that's a good story. Number 2, we have a funding issue. Most of our operations are funded by the state. So 2 programs that we have is the Coastal Link fixed route service and the Norwalk ADA. They've been underfunded for years. We've been working on getting that right-sized with the state, and it's definitely a goal of mine to continue working on that. And then lastly, the timing of funding from the state. Typically, not complaining or anything here, but the process is they fund us usually a month or 2 in arrears. So we have to forward our expense funding for operations, and that means we rely on a $4 million credit line. So in terms of what the city funds, primarily for the past few years, it's been to pay down the debt. It's been a great story. Appreciate your support over the years. Number 2, it's been funding those funding shortfalls and also some interest. So what we're doing here is we're going to work on paying that debt down completely. Should be done by the end of this fiscal year. We're proposing here in fiscal year 24. And also I'd like to build a little bit of a cushion, like to build a nice reserve, but at least enough to where we don't have to rely on the credit line. That would save the taxpayers the interest expense in fiscal year 22. $72,000 of the funding went to interest through 7 months of fiscal year 23. Interest rates have gone up. Our rate is prime plus a quarter. The taxpayers in Norwalk have spent $97,000 on interest. So not really a great model, but we're not far from getting out of it. And that's why we're requesting flat funding. And I think 660 would cut it.
Okay. Questions, comments for Matt?
For everybody's edification, I do have the full grant agency packages here that I can share. But given the flat request, well, if anybody wants to see more detail, I can pull up the application.
I think you sent it out to us, Tom, right?
Yeah, you have it all, but it's
okay.
34 pages. If you don't have it at the ready,
Yeah.
I can pull it up.
Just wanted to make sure I got it. Yeah.
And to be clear, Matt, yours is not 34. Yours is a part of the 34. That's all the grants this evening.
Yep, thanks.
All right. So I think we're okay with that. Everybody agree?
Now, what choice do we have?
Yeah, well, go ahead. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
No, that's my question is what are the choices we have? I mean, if we make it lower, it's only going to cost us more. Eventually.
Right, yeah, and I'm committed to fixing this. I mean, we've been working on this over the years, but one of the things that really needs to happen is the state needs to fix those two funding issues. So I will do my best to get that corrected as we march into just in the months ahead and the fiscal year ahead. And yeah.
The only thing I would mention is you mentioned that you're on a floating rate with Prime, obviously up to about 6, 7 now, right?
Yeah.
Is there a way you could lock in these rates or?
We could look at that. Yeah. The revolving credit line gives us flexibility. I haven't spent a lot of time looking into locking in the rates.
No, but short term, you're not going to be able to. But I think if there's any long term, is this a year to year? You can't lock it in. But if it's over years, you could lock in, obviously, if you can. I don't know if the city can do that kind of stuff, but.
Right. Yeah. Actually, Henry approached me a year or two ago about it. I think since it's a credit line, it's short-term borrowing. That's a reason why, a long-term loan wouldn't necessarily help, but we're so close. We're down to 525,000. I think in another year or two, we're going to have that paid off. So, perfect world, we're not going to need this. So that's my optimistic thinking, at least.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments from Matt? Thank you, Matt. Should we move to probate court?
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Matt. All right, under the probate court, actually a slight reduction of $200 year over year. We do not have any reps on the line. They offered to. I told them that we should be okay given the magnitude of the request. So if anybody has any questions or takeaways, I'm happy to approach them tomorrow.
I'm just curious, what are we giving them the money for?
It's just office supplies and whatever activities they have to do. They do have an office here. We do have a billing model. They pay for their space and so on and so forth. And we actually share this with Wilton. We bill Wilton a portion of the expenses for this, so we do get about $8,000 or $9,000 a year from Wilton for that. But it's just the the day-to-day stuff, the utilities and the office supplies and whatever
But I've recently gone through this and I know that they collect some fairly significant fees. So I'm just curious that this isn't a huge amount of money, that kind of surprised that they need that much. Okay.
I got they've got 13,000 of that is postage, so I'm guessing they probably have to send out a lot of registered mail and or.
Well, they post notices in the newspapers, maybe.
Yes, it could be that. And then they've got 15,000 in supplies and then 12,200 in other, which is made up of scanners, umbrella insurance, commercial insurance, typewriters, a little bit of office furniture, and fees for storage and film records.
Okay, that's fine. I'll write a letter myself one day.
No, I'd actually like to concur with Jim's comment because I've gone through it as well, and I was surprised at the level of fee that I had to pay to settle through probate. And it turns out that state of Connecticut is one of the only states in the United States that charges such a fee within a probate situation. So given that they do have fees, I don't know whether they're able to retain any of that or whether it goes straight to Hartford, but I would think that they are self-funding and perhaps we don't need to give them a grant at all.
Yes.
Yeah, so Tom, can you ask them to come back and explain how their fee structure works and what that covers and what is still gapped based on the requirement for a grant? Excuse me.
Sure. Quite honestly, I brought this up to my attorney and he said, I'd love to help you out, Jim, but maybe you should be talking to Bob Duff and go up the state level because there's not much that he could do about it. So, but let's ask the question. I think it's worthwhile.
Okay.
All right, Harbor Commission?
Yeah, actually, a reduction request here, $4,000 or about 17%. We have Alan Kibbe on the line and I see him now. Take it away.
Thank you, Tom. Can you hear me?
Yep.
We got you. Yes.
Excellent. Harbor Management Commission has a reduction in request this year from $24,000 to $20,000. That's largely because we've been able to potentially augment our revenue for next year. The commission's major source of revenue is the providing of mooring permits for moorings for vessels in Norwalk Harbor, both at the yacht clubs and just the general public who wants to have a mooring position. We get a small grant from the health department for $3,000 to underwrite some water quality projects in the harbor, and we fund the. We get a $20,000 grant from the city, so that's our source of revenue. Our expenses are kind of a little bit fixed. We fund the Connecticut State Harbor Master, who is Officer Bruce Lavallo from the Norwalk Police Department, for $1,000 a month. It's $12,000 a year. It's easy multiplication for me. He does a tremendous amount of, the harbor master does a tremendous amount of work for the amount of money we pay him. The state stipend he gets is a minimal amount of money to do this job. So we're grateful that he continues with us for this cost. Our other major expense, we maintain a boat for the harbor master. Again, it's our expenses with that are shared with the Shellfish Commission, 50-50, because they need a vessel as well to go out and do their inspections. And we have a consultant to help us through all of the complexities of the state regulations that pertain to all the things we have to approve, dock approvals for new docks, CAM, coastal area management applications, and so forth, which is a very complex quagmire of regulations that you need somebody who's really done that, understands it, and can help us through that as a commission. The reason for our reduction in request is because we were able this year to raise our fees for moorings. The state statutes cap a mooring fee at $200 per mooring. We have been charging for more than 12 years, $2 per vessel foot per mooring. So a 40-foot boat on a mooring would be $80 for the mooring. We've been able to increase that to $5 a foot. That's a very big increase. That goes for a 40-foot boat goes from $80 to $200, which is a big increase for us. And so we're able to consequently reduce our dependence on the city of Norwalk grant. So that's my.
Thank you, Alan. Questions for Alan?
Just a quick question on the mooring fee. I have no idea. I'm sure Jim would know this. Is that $200 a season, a month, or what is that fee for?
The state caps it at $200 a season.
A season.
It's a state statute, and that's what it is in Connecticut.
Okay, thank you.
And so, I'm sorry, go. Ian, was that you?
My question is the fee really size dependent, or isn't it more just unit dependent? And so my question is, why not be charging just the $200 per mooring?
The history has been that we've charged by the foot for quite a period of time, and our people are used to that. So you take a smaller boat, a 30-foot boat at $5 is $150 a year for the privilege of the mooring.
But a mooring is a mooring.
mooring is a mooring, although the space the mooring occupies is different. Most of our moorings outside of the central harbor are what we call a full swing mooring. So the vessel swings 360 degrees around a mooring. So the bigger the vessel, the bigger the circle it occupies. When the wind changes and the boat has to spin around, it takes up a bigger circle. So that's the thinking behind the different charge, the per foot charge.
Understood. What do our neighboring towns charge?
Some of them are $60 just for the season. Some are $200 for the season. If you go out of state, they get much higher. As I've talked with some of you about it, I have a mooring that I maintain in Port Jefferson, just as a place to go, and the mooring fee there is $350 because they don't have a state statute that limits it. But in the scope of boating, just I'm going to editorialize, but the scope of boating, $60 or $80 or $200 is chump change compared to what it costs to maintain and operate a vessel, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And it's much cheaper than docking it, right? In a dock or a.
Yeah, our Norwalk marinas right now, they're $150 to $200 a foot for the season to tie up your boat, where Weir is, someone here is going to be less than $200, just the maximum we can charge for a mooring. Of course, a
How many
dock has a
moorings-
lot of
How many
advantages.
moorings do we have in the city?
I don't have the exact number. I think about 1,100-1,200.
Wow.
So Alan, what I might suggest, right, because you don't want to shock your constituents, but I think Ann's on a good point, which is saying, can we move to a flat fee model over a period of time that people won't revolt over? I don't, I am not, my boating experience is my 2 tandem kayaks that I can keep on the roof of my car. So I don't know how the community would take to that, but is there an opportunity to switch to a flat fee, or is that just going to cause upheaval everywhere?
We've just changed our fee from $2 to $5 a foot, which is for if you're a boater, you know that boaters are notoriously cheap, and there's all scotch in their background, so that a $2 to $5 raise in the mooring fee is huge when a good anchor costs $400. So it's the way boaters are. I'm
Okay.
that too. So we're having a big pushback on our 2 foot to $2 to $5 fee increase.
So it would cause major upheaval to go to a flat fee model.
Yes, it would.
So let me just add to that. Let me just make a comment on that, because I disagree with the increase to $5 a foot, because what you're not taking into consideration is the fact that in order to get to that mooring, you have to have a place on land that you can leave from. And there are yacht clubs out there that have significant number of moorings. And what you're doing is you're just adding more expense to the cost that they have of just getting access to the water. If you look at moorings are cheaper because you have to pay fees to get out there, whether it's a launch service or something like that. So, adding $3 a foot to the size of your boat, all of a sudden, it's nickels and dimes, but they eventually mount up to dollars. And also, I believe that the Harbor Commission collects a fee from some of the yacht clubs as well. Is that not right?
No, we collect mooring fees for their moorings, the same as we do from anyone else.
Don't you also collect a fee from some of the yacht clubs?
All of the moorings in Norwalk Harbor pay a fee on the same schedule, including the yacht clubs and the.
No, I'm saying over and
commercial
above,
vessels.
over and above the mooring fees.
No, it's all exactly the same rate.
Okay, so
No, what I will say is that the yacht clubs charge their members vastly more than what the cost of a mooring permit is.
That's what I'm saying.
Provide
is you have
additional
to-
services.
you have to belong to a yacht club in order to get your launch to get out to the boat, unless you have some public, unless there's some public access that you can launch a small boat to get out to,
Correct.
a more sizable boat out there. So saying that it's not that expensive at $2 to $5 a foot, that's not really true, because the expense of maintaining a mooring is quite a bit more. That you either have to belong to a yacht club, or you have to have access to the water. You have to take care of the mooring tackle and all that. The mooring tackle and everything in Wilson Cove, for example, is mapped out with the Corps of Engineers. There's a permit from the Corps of Engineers setting up that mooring field. You will also have to coordinate with all the oystermen, because there are oyster beds out there. So I think that to add another couple of dollars a foot it does run into some money, and it's just one more little thing that you've got to pay for.
Those expenses. Sorry.
The other question I had, really, before I got on that little rant, was what's the cost of the consultant that you have?
About 20,
12,000 for the harbor master.
he's about $20,000 a year,
20,000 a year.
roughly.
Okay. And then what about the what kind of vessel do they have, and how much does that cost to maintain?
It costs very little to maintain. It's except when we have to replace it. It's a secondhand vessel. I don't know the particulars about it.
Okay, so basically it comes to about $32,000 worth of expense plus whatever, expenses plus whatever that vessel costs, and then that's offset by the $5 a foot for all those, plus the sharing with the oystermen.
Correct.
So $20,000 is probably even generous. So I'm not, I don't want to change it. I don't want to take anything away from it.
Yeah, look.
It's Jessica here. Tom, do you have Alan's application that he put in for the grant that actually has the line item budget that lays out exactly what the harbor master receives, what the consultant receives, and what the boat fee is? Because I know that Alan submitted the grant application with all of those line items, not only for 2022, but also for the request for this year as well.
Yes, I have it.
That is in the package that we have received.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you.
And if I could, not to belabor it, and we can have another discussion on this. I think the Harbor Commission does a great job. And I think they have more than just the job of maintaining the moorings. They have the job of also maintaining the water quality around the Norwalk Harbor. And the Norwalk Harbor has received close to failing grades from Save the Sound. Whether or not you believe the way they test or not is another thing, but it is, when we compare ourselves, Norwalk, to our neighbors, we compare pretty close. We compare to Flushing, Queens, is the Norwalk Harbor. So I think that the Harbor Commission has a much broader mandate. And relative to fees, I do think it is reasonably nominal to just even have the privilege to have a mooring. I get the issue relative to size, maybe it's two-tiered, but if you were able to raise more funds, you can broaden your scope of the other things, the other very important things that you do, which is dealing with water quality, docks, which relate to the moorings, but it relates to the quality of Norwalk Harbor. So I would advocate that you think about and compare mooring fees compared to Darien, Westport, our direct neighbors, direct comparables, and figure out a budget that you would like to do for some of your other areas, and what funds it is the mooring fees. And then if you're increasing your revenues, then maybe the city no longer needs to, you become self-funding. the city doesn't need to provide a $20,000 grant anymore.
And I think that's fair and an overtime statement. As
Yes.
we look at FY '24 and what was laid out in the grant proposal, there is a need. That need thankfully is down $4,000 year to year. My direct question to my fellow board members is, are we willing to fund that, or are we saying no? There's all sorts of discussion here, but we need to get to a decision.
Yeah. I think we should definitely fund it. And one thing on the pricing, based on this discussion, which I knew nothing about until I just heard it, I agree with you, Alan, that should be based on a per foot basis. I think that's the fairest way to price a boat owner. I mean, to charge somebody with 100-foot boat the same $200 as if somebody with a 10-foot boat makes no sense to me, but that's just my opinion.
All right.
May I please just say something that wasn't covered?
Sure,
and-
Jessica.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry to interrupt. One of the things that Alan touched on, but I wanted to articulate a little bit further with the consultant question, was that all of the planning and zoning applications that go into planning and zoning, if they are coastal related in any way, shape, or form, they get referred to the Harbor Commission. And the Harbor Commission actually provides an official recommendation to DEEP for that particular application, whether they support that or they're making a recommendation or whether they're denying that. And DEEP takes that into consideration along with the planning and zoning commission as well. And so I wanted to mention that because as far as the consultant goes for $20,000 a year, to a large extent, that actual $20,000 is what employs a certified official that actually advises the Harbor Commission on those particular applications related to not only state statute, but federal statute for waters as well. So I just wanted to articulate that a little bit more because I think that that's a big piece of the budget in which the Harbor Commission is asking for.
Thank you, Jessica. So again, I will ask my fellow board members, is there anyone who opposes funding this grant at this stage?
I do not. I support funding this grant. I asked for a consideration for next year of some of these ideas.
So noted. Let's move on then, please, to redevelopment. Because this is something I really want to understand why we got $500,000 after 3 years of self-funding.
Yeah, so this is well, not a brand new request, but a re-request, if you will, after several years of being self-funded. We have Brian Bedoli on the line to discuss this one. It's an even 500,000. Go ahead, Brian.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Nice to meet those of you who I haven't met yet. I'm Brian Bedoli, I'm the executive director with the RDA. I've been here for about 3 years. So what we have before you tonight, as noted, was a $500,000 request, and I can sort of directly just start at the head here with the answer to the previous question in terms of how we were self-funding for years or the 3 years prior and how we got to where we are today. And effectively what that was is the decision was made, and this is before I got here, that the city would exhaust its deferred revenues, which were revenues from past development projects. Again, that happened before my time. And that has since occurred. So what we're asking for is a portion of our operating budget. Our total operating budget is about $1.7 million. This would be a portion of it that's really dedicated to the work we do on behalf of the city, providing economic and community development support for the city in a variety of ways. So as when I first came into this position, we worked with the city council, the mayor's office, the Office of Economic and Community Development to develop a strategic plan to really define the action items that we would all work on, who would be responsible and what we would be ultimately doing over the next 5 years. So basically what this is funding to support those initiatives. And I think shedding a little light on those and how we kind of structure the strategic plan. Our office, and as it relates to this money, is really focused on revenue generation for the city. So that occurs in a number of ways. So that occurs in terms of the grants we've obtained. We've actually obtained almost $15 million in new grant funding for the city. For capital projects, a lot of streetscape work, things around, that support the development projects and ultimately take the burden out of the public works budget and puts it onto either state or federal funding partners as available. On the other piece is offering project management support for these capital projects. So sort of being an extension of DPW, economic and community development, making sure that projects, budgets are adhered to, or we're adhering to the grant requirements. And I think one of the interesting things to note as you get these grants, I think, they're very capital heavy. So in terms of operating assistance, this is really, I think, the point to mention that the money that you'll be providing with this 500,000 is leverage to access these funds and to make sure that these funds are being administered in the correct way. And then I think the other piece of it is just, in general, the development work that we do. So really, apart from the grants, from a revenue generating perspective, we're talking about trying to grow the grant list. So we've been working on a number of projects with the city, specifically 1517 Chestnut, which are looking at a disposition of a city asset, which we are sort of serving as the main business agent on, which will result in a $4.6 million sort of payment to the city, obviously, despite any credits, but also the property tax revenue that comes from that kind of development. So we're looking almost at $1 million a year. We are sourcing these projects actively. I don't know if some of you have heard about the work we're doing with Webster Lot and the like, but really we've oriented our work program to not just be an expense item, but to really focus on an investment and how we can generate returns for the city. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think that's probably the highest level explanation I could give in terms of our requests.
Thank you, Brian. Questions from the board?
I'm still not quite sure. Are you getting money from, how much money are you getting from other sources right now? It sounds like you were saying that you've got a plan for $1.7 million, but you need another 500 from us.
Correct. So yeah, our budget pretty much represents, a third would be from various federal and state grants. We would still be using some of our cash reserve to fund a portion of the other third, and then we'd be looking for the other third in the most simple terms as part of this grant.
And have you asked the state for more money? I keep reading about all the surpluses we have in the state.
Yeah, we asked the state. I mean, we're putting grants and putting a request to the state every day, but sort of as I mentioned, the operating funds, they kind of look at it as the city responsibility in terms of providing local support. They really want to focus on capital nuts and bolts dollars. But in order to access that, we have to make sure that we have the administrative frameworks in order to do that. And that's what this funding would support.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have any other funding right now for administrative purposes?
There's small portions of the grants, as I mentioned, in terms of federal and state, but it's often relegated. I mean, one example that I could give you is, of the $5 million for the DECD Pinnacle Streetscape grant, we're at about $30,000 to $60,000 in operate, or $30,000 actually in operating money that is available. So it's very small in terms of what they want to allow for that kind of activity. So no, the answer is no, apart from what we're requesting.
I think I would love to say, let's give you that money. But I think that under the circumstances that we have, being pushed up against the wall right now, I don't see clear to go for 500,000, maybe 100,000. What kind of a run rate do we have to get through the rest of the year?
Well, I think the one thing too, just to note that just historically, there were these funds being provided by the redevelopment agency. So I think that delta looks very large, but that's just because the decision was made to try to save the $1.5 million over the last 3 years. In terms of run rate, I mean, what we're talking about, if we reduce this, is basically, how are we going to provide administrative support to $15–20 million of active grants? So that would be a discussion we'd have to have with the city council, the mayor's office, the City of Economic Development, and ultimately that would get shifted over to some other entity internal to the city in order to provide these sort of administrative services. So I think it's really an expansion of the capacity of the city. And I think at a relative bargain, considering our sort of benefit framework is obviously different.
Yeah, Brian, I understand. I might ask Jim's question slightly differently, right? And you probably give the same answer, but what breaks if I reduce this by 100,000? What breaks if I reduce this by 200,000? What breaks if I reduce this by 250,000? Right? Again, understand we don't want to play a game of left pocket, right pocket here, but do want to understand, in a extremely tight budget year, what opportunities and what the risks are of some level of reduction in this funding.
Okay, I appreciate the question. So, believe me, I know we all don't know each other very well, but if you look at the past 3 years, if we didn't need it, I wouldn't be asking for it. And I think in terms of what breaks, in terms of the amount of money, if you reduce it, is staffing. And that would be my bigger concern. So when we look at, obviously, completely recognizing it's a tight budget year and having recognized that years leading up to this and trying to generate as much capital resources for the city to help fill those holes. So you're not bonding out of DPW or bonding out of other departments for capital improvements that are required. We went out and got these grants. So now we have to administer them. So I think it's just looking at the return ratio, what you're getting to what you're, saving. Is it obviously the value proposition I'm trying to say, but to answer your question directly, it's staffing. And I think overwhelming the staffing on this would be a risk that we wouldn't want to take, considering how much money of state and federal resources are now on the line. And we want to have positive performance on those so we get more moving forward.
Understood, right? So basically what you're saying is we would put at risk our ability to execute on the 19 million in grants we've already received.
Yeah, and also pushing for more, and we work with Henry's office, we work with Rita in the Office of Economic Development. So when we're not having active capacity managing these grants, we're writing new grants. I mean, that's how I push, and that's how we've oriented the new redevelopment agency as part of the strategic plan. So I think it's more than,
And last question for me, and then I'll turn to other board members. For the grants we have received, because I'm reacting to your point on we're writing new grants, right? So the comment on headcount is related to the grants we have received thus far, and therefore if we were to reduce this, we are not able to execute on the existing grants, or we're not able to continue to apply for new grants.
both. So the way we have it structured here is people are writing grants and managing the projects.
Okay, thank you. Other
Ed,
questions from other
this
board
is me.
members?
Ed, this is me, Troy. Yeah, this has come up over the years, and this is one thing I would strongly support. The multiplier effect here is great. I wish we could get our more return bang for our buck in all our situations like this. But in order to handle those existing grants and also to get new grants, I think this is a very, I have no problem with this at all.
Okay, thank you, Troy. Other comments?
My comment would be, again, potentially for the future, is having a look at what the current grants are and their runoff, what the grant pipeline looks like for the future, and therefore be able to understand what kind of resources you need with that. I do think that $500,000 is a large sum of money. When you look at the 2023 budget, they were at the deficit was 328,000, and in the request it's for 422,000. And so the question is, can we fund it flat to the previous year of what that deficit was, and if they need additional funds to come back?
Yeah, and I could speak to that deficit. So that specific number was basically what got pulled out of our cash reserve. So it was this whole number still with what we're talking about, but it just basically all came out, and whatever we had left out of our deferred revenue was the delta between that 328 and the 5.
What is the bottom line that we have to go one more year to administer the grants we have? How much does that cost?
I don't think I'm understanding your in terms of how much
So
money
you've been saying
that
you've been saying that this is really to administer the existing grants that are out there and start to look for other new grants to fill in.
Right.
What is the administrative cost to do that?
So I think, it's hard to ascertain on a per grant basis, just because that there's, obviously the overhead that we have, the financial reporting. So we maintain our own finance office as well, just for clarification. So this isn't putting any additional strain on finance.
Yeah,
We have our own in-house accountant. We only have 2 positions. We have a finance director and an accountant, which obviously take a portion of what you're referring to. And we have 2.5 time position in terms of project management, grant writing, and then a portion of myself, going out, getting political support, soliciting grants. There's a lot that goes into the life cycle of a grant that isn't just, all right, we're processing a payment, here we go, now we're done. There's design, there's consultants that need to go. So I think it's hard for me. I can't quite pinpoint specifically what portion of our budget is related. We're all working on grants at any given time. What we're asking for is 1/3 of our budget to try to get to that point, to have the full agency, working, if that can help.
Well, see, the problem I have is that you can't tell me how much that is yet on the other hand, you tell me that that's what you need it for.
If you could,
So
yeah,
I
then that's okay, completely fair. So what I can say though, is what we need is the whole $1.7 million to manage our grant portfolio. That's the bread and butter of what we do. I mean, what we're talking about here is all the positions in the agency. We have 8 positions, with up 2 of those being admins. So with 6 people, it's, administering a grant is, as I mentioned, it's not just processing payments. It's also going out, hiring contractors, doing construction management, soliciting the grant, writing the grant, and then all the financial reporting that's tied to that. So our total bottom line is $1.7 million in what we do. So it's kind of
Right.
phrasing that question in that way, and typically how this business we would look at it. So, but if you want us to try to pull something out, I'd be happy to try to get you more detail on that.
Right. I mean, the simplest way to look at it, right, is we've got a 10x return on that expense. A little over that, right? 1.7, and we're driving 19 million right now. So I round it down or round up. That's how I get to a 10x. Fair?
And there's also regulatory things that we do as an agency as well that are on behalf of the city. So when you talk about the design of different projects, you talk about different part of the zoning process, that is also things that we are required to do. We actually have a whole document here, the strategic plan, and I can always send a link that shows our entire work program so you can see the other types of things that we're doing. A lot of this being grant funded. So it's co-commingled in terms of how we're allocating these things. So that's just to your specific question.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Other questions or comments at this point?
No.
I think we leave this in for now.
I would go for to reduce it by 100, and then if they come back and show us where they really need it and how they need it, then maybe we consider putting it back in. But we haven't gotten the answer to the question I asked, and that's what my only concern is. I think they do a great job. I'm still not comfortable with where the money went. That for 3 years or two years, they don't need anything, and now all of a sudden they need 500,000. It's not really clear to me.
Well, again, if you look at things, that's a little bit left pocket, right pocket, right? Because we took it out of other reserves. We
Right.
just didn't do it as a grant.
For the record, I'm comfortable with the 500,000.
I would support a reduction.
Again,
Do you want to leave it as an open item?
yeah, let's leave it as an open item for discussion on Monday.
And if it would help you guys at all, if you could just rephrase the question, because I'm trying to understand, I'd be happy to try to pull that information for you if it would be helpful.
I think maybe if we take a look at what the strategic plan says, does that have historical information in it as well? I assume so.
It's more focused on the 2020 to 2025 period of forward projects. And it's project-based, not budget-based.
But I believe there's a little bit more line item detail in the grant proposal materials
Yeah.
that I'm sent over as well.
I don't have the book with me. I'm out on the West Coast, so I don't have the book with me to take a look at, so.
Brian,
maybe
Brian,
my
you can
mind
send me
will
the link.
change.
I'll get it out to the BET.
I don't need the link. I have it on my desk at home, and I'll be home by the end of the week. So let's put it in, let's put it on the.
We'll leave it as an open item.
Yeah.
We'll review the materials that we have in front of us. Tom, if we could get the strategic plan, just so it's additional backup if anybody wants it, so that we can make a quick and clear decision on Monday.
Right. Send that to me, Brian.
Everybody, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brian. Brian, this is not personal. I hope you know that. This is
This is just business, my
trying to
friend.
balance
I'm
the
well
budget.
aware. It's all good. It's money here, so we're good.
I think you guys do a great job.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. I think you're doing a great job asking the right questions, so I appreciate it.
Yep.
Take
Okay.
care.
Thank you, Brian. Should we move to fair housing?
Yes, I see Margaret waiting patiently for quite some time now. Thank you very much. So their request little bit of a line item shift here, but actually is down about $2,500 between last year's, those two numbers, which totals 180, and this year's request, which totals 178. So I do have the grant application here. If anybody did not get a chance to look through it or has any specific questions, I can pull that up on my screen. Margaret, the floor is yours.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for giving us this time. I'm Margaret Sueb, Norwalk's Fair Housing Officer. And as I've been listening all evening, I want you to know this is my 27th budget application. So I'm hoping that you'll find that I've gotten good at this. We have reduced our budget requests this year significantly because for the last, I want to say probably 2 or 3 years, we had a little over $12,000 in there to looking for some part-time support staff, ideally a law student, because fair housing is about the law. It's about housing discrimination law. But between COVID and I don't know what else, but I mean, we hit this at the entirely wrong time. And we discovered that 12,000 is not appealing to anybody who might be interested in a part-time position. So this year we took that out, and you know, in all honesty, it'll be back someday. We'll be looking for, you know, a number that will actually lead to somebody accepting a job. But for the time being, we took it out. So this is a tiny budget, basically. We have 10,000 total for office expenses, employee training, that kind of stuff, equipment. We have $1,500 for the commission. The Fair Housing Advisory Commission, actually, this is their budget, and I'm staff to them in terms of the budget. I assist them in preparing it and submitting it and shepherding it through your process. But it is their budget. Again, with COVID, we haven't done any events like we usually do. All the group training sessions and events, of course, have been put on hold. We're starting with something small in April, which is Fair Housing Month. And I'm hopeful that by the new fiscal year that we can do more. So that's the story. Overall, we're down, our budget is down by $2,685. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a comment. My comment is yes, Ms. Sweep has been coming to the BET for many years. What she doesn't say is how well known she is in the industry. And so as a representative of the city of Norwalk, she does us proud in this whole area of fair housing. So I am supportive of whatever budget the budget that she is seeking. And I thank her for coming down the 12,000.
Thank you so much.
I echo that from Ann too. It's Troy.
Thank you.
Any additional comments? And I think we're good on these two items here.
Okay, thank you all for your time. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Margaret.
it.
Thank you, Margaret.
If I can just touch on tomorrow night, Board of Ed only, starting at 6:30. I will send out the link to the Norwalk Public Schools budget book, highlighting several sections that address some of the questions that we got before, the carryover estimates, line item detail from their ERP. And I did chat with Lunda today. He will be coming with a presentation as well. So you're welcome to look through any and all parts of their budget book for the detail and gather up any questions that you might have. But that is the plan for tomorrow evening.
Okay.
If he's giving a presentation, can you get it to us before he gives it to us, or that would be helpful?
I'll ask him. Yeah.
Tom, I have one question leading up to Monday, right? We've challenged a number of the department heads to go scrub their budgets again, look at, run rate versus actuals, et cetera, et cetera. Is it realistic to try and have all of that input by our Monday reconciliation meeting?
I can try to get a consensus tomorrow, see how far along they are. I mean, I think the message has been pretty consistent to everybody. Some of them have already had 2 or 3 days to look at it. Some of them are just starting, today.
Yep.
I'm just it might be an aggregation challenge on my end, but I will certainly do my darndest to have everything ready. At present, we are sitting at about 270,000 in reductions. But clearly, there are a tremendous amount of line items that everybody's looking at as we speak. So I expect to see a lot more, but again, nothing of tremendous magnitude on an individual line. It's going to be 1,000 here. It's going to be 2,000 there. It's going to be 500 here. And that just takes time to pull together, but I can give them a nudge tomorrow and try to get an estimate.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great, right? I'm just trying to think if we're trying to get resolved on all our open items, if we're trying to get resolved on what we're going to approve, right? We kind of need to see that stuff.
A suggestion here might be that, to save time, to take a look in total, what can they shave off? Is it 20,000 that they can save us? Is it 200 that they can squeeze out? And we can take a look at the total, what they've already taken out, what size of budget they have, and challenge them for more or less of that. I think it's difficult and time consuming. I mean, if we take, what we did is we've added up all the others at sometimes and said, okay, that's $200,000. Clearly you can save 10% of that. Rather than going through item by item by item by item and say, I can save $3 here, $25 there, 100 here, 100 there. Is it possible that we could just ask them, and I'm just throwing this out to the group to suggest that maybe they give us a one number that they're going to reduce their remaining budget by to reflect all those things that they really haven't looked at? Because I'll bet, I can't imagine, with the exception of you, Tom, that everybody has looked at what their year-to-date run rate is.
I've looked at all of theirs, not just my own.
I know, but no, that's what I mean. You're the only one that looked at them. And I doubt I'd be really surprised if every one of those people we spoke to have looked at their run rate and done that calculation like Ed has suggested, what's a zero-based budget and go forward. And to do that, even those guys that we talked to on Monday, I think it's going to be hard-pressed. They'd be hard-pressed to go through that exercise right now.
Hey, Tom?
Yeah.
I would make a suggestion from a procedural point of view. I think you should give them a deadline, like Friday at 3 p.m., and they have to do something in writing. And if they want to give line item detail, that's fine, but there needs to be a summary on the top. And then each package should be sent to all the BET members so they can look them over the weekend. You have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, because otherwise there's no time. We've run out of time. We're looking at line items that are $5,000. We've done that already. They know where you're going from and what you're looking for, and have a hard deadline. And if they don't get the stuff in on time, then maybe they're out of luck and it gets done to them instead of with them.
I just feel like we have to do that, Henry, because you're right. We're on a deadline here, right? We have to approve a budget.
Ed, we've been doing this since October.
Yeah.
And Tom will back me up because it happened last year also when he came in the middle. There's an 80-20 rule. Maybe it's 90-10. 80 to 90% are Johnny on the spot. They get their numbers in on time. They put it into the computer and they give us all the detail. And 10 to 20 don't. And they're running around at the last second, giving us changes, saying that we got it wrong. And we are at a point where we want to say, it's closed. Time is up. what you got in, that's what gets considered. And then Monday, we're gonna have enough, we're barely gonna have enough time to just go through all of these packages. You go through every department again one time, and you got Board of Ed presenting on Wednesday. It doesn't give
Right.
you much time. They're 225 million. So
Okay.
I really think, Tom, that's the way to put out the notice. Let them get it to you one time. If 3 o'clock is too late, make it 1 o'clock so that you can assemble, aggregate, and send it out to everybody. I think it's important that the BET members have enough time to consider what's been done with a little bit of leisure rather than the pressure cooker of 4 hours every night we have a session.
I echo that, but I would also suggest setting a top line goal, much as the mayor has done, saying no more than a 3.5% increase. I would suggest that if we could ask for 1%, that people find 1%.
That's different than what we asked each department to do at this point in time. We asked each department to look at those line items that were just straight lifts of FY23 and get realistic on it. We didn't say to everybody, thank you for your input, now find 1%, right? I think we need to have them go through the exercise we asked. To Jim's point, they can present that back to me. I looked at all my line items and I can save you $5,000. I don't need to know how much of it came out of printing versus other professional services versus. But I think we need to stick to the direction we gave them, which is you've got to go look at those line items and let us know what the reduction can be.
I have a suggestion. I remember one of the meetings, they did comb through all their line items, and they also said that for the line items that they just carried over, they left them there because they felt like that's what they thought they would need. And I feel like for a lot of the department heads, they might, because they see that we're going off historical line items, they might just, keep their budget as is. A suggestion I have would be, whatever they've used to date, maybe using that as a forecast or annualizing it, so we have an estimate of what they might actually need. And if we have that in the Excel doc as a comparison, that might help with reason.
That's a good way to do it, Kendrick. Another way to do it is the carrot and the stick method, right? Those, to Henry's point, the 80% of people who came out of these meetings are looking at those line items are going to come back and say, here's what I can save you. For the 20% who say, no, my number's my number. Well, fine, we're going to give you a flat to kind of your point, Kendrick, and Ann's in those cases. Fine, you get a flat reduction of an additional 1% off of your budget.
We've got 30 or 35 departments we review. Each one has hundreds of line items. You're asking us to go through all of that and determine what the run rate is and what the floor is. I think it's too late for that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I know.
I think that's asking Tom to do an incredible.
I understand, but we asked each department to come back and look and scrub their numbers. So give me what your scrub number is and give it to us by Friday.
Great.
And if you, and I agree with Ed's approach in the vein of, if you can't tell us and it's flat, then we will give you this number and you'll find it within. So it's actually an alternative, and that's the carrot and stick. And yes, I agree that it is too late for us to do, it is too late in the game, and you've been doing this too long to really do the line item by line item. But I think there is a lot of fat or cushion in some of the, in all of those other numbers.
Opportunities, Ann.
Opportunity.
And I would suggest in the future, we do the Board of Ed first. Because as Roy Sutton said, that's where the money is.
Right.
You wouldn't want us to shortchange our savings because we only had 3 days, but okay.
And
So
honestly,
it would, Tom, I'll go back to what Henry said. If we can ask the departments to come back with their reforecast, it can be at the bottom line number by Friday with any detail they want to provide. That gives us the opportunity to review it. Those departments that don't move off their current number. We can discuss on Monday whether we can accept that or whether we're going to give them a reduced target that they just have to go figure out.
But you know, there might be there is something that some middle ground here maybe is that if Tom is going to send out, a note tonight or tomorrow saying that they have to get this in by 3 o'clock or 1 o'clock on Friday, you might be able to get a 1%. A 1% might be cheaper, might be smaller than going through every one of those items. So I don't see that there's any problem with saying, we've asked you to go through those. Our estimate is that you should come up with at least 1%. If you don't go through every one of those to justify that, we'll give you the 1% reduction right off the top. And then you go figure out where it is. If you go through it, we would like to have more, go through every one of them, try to give us a more finite number, great. But I don't think it's disingenuous to go and tell them that they're going to get charged 1% if they don't come in with something. Because there is 1%, as Ann says, there's plenty of opportunities in those numbers.
I just remember a CEO telling me that when they needed to save money, he went to the department heads and said, give me 5%. And they all came back with 5%. And we're suggesting one, which is not a large number.
No,
And
it's
when I worked at Citigroup, we were given challenges of 5%. You scrub your budget as much as possible. And then we'd say, okay, is that it? And everybody said, yep, that's as far as we can go. We said, okay, great. We're only going to charge you another 5% that you have to go find someplace else. That's it. You got a 5% credit on the bottom of your budget and you made it. That's it. I don't think that asking them for 1% out of stuff that they haven't even looked at is too onerous.
Yeah, but if you go back through all of our notes, guys, right, there are certain departments where there weren't going to, where their budget proposal made sense, where there was nothing more we asked. There's other departments like ECD that we said, overall, your budget is way too high. And every single one of your line items is your FY23 number now just plopped into FY24. You've got to go look at that and fix that, right? So again, I think we start with the direction we gave them. I can get my arms around, Jim, your point of, look, I'm not going to surprise you at the end of this with a 1%, right? We asked you to scrub your numbers. We think there's money in there in at least 1%. And we're going to look overall for that number. That's fine. But I think, again, we talked to the different department heads. We asked them to go scrub their numbers. Come back with your scrub number. If we don't see a decline in it based on what you've scrubbed, we will assign a decline. We will assign a reduced number to you.
Based on what Ed said, there's a moral hazard. So if you game the system and come in at 8%, the 1% is easy to find. The people who played it straight, played it very tight and did everything we asked. And now we're saying, give us the same as everyone else. It's not treating their behavior, fairly, I think.
Yeah, Henry, are you suggesting that anybody who came in already under 3.5, we don't apply that blanket 1%?
I don't think we should have a 1%. I personally think, I go back to Ed, we've spent dozens and dozens of hours, line item by line item, questioning the department heads and gave them tasks gently. Please go back and check again. Okay? Now the time is to come back and say, what do they say? And you know what? On Monday morning, you're allowed to say, here are the 5 people I want to have coming in Monday night because I want to ask them questions. We asked you to do this and you didn't give us numbers. What's going on here? But to ask for a blanket 1% late in the game like this, I don't know. Then what did we do for the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I am, Henry, right? Which is, again, there are certain areas, economic development was the clearest one to me, right? The challenge to that whole team was you're in at 6%, guys. On a target the mayor asked you at 3.5, fix it.
I could suggest maybe there is a tiering of some of these departments. So I saw 3 departments that I think did a great job, and it's bare bones, and they do a great job with a nominal amount of money. Town clerk, tax, IT, bill code enforcement. And so maybe there is a tiering, because clearly there were some with excess and there were some that were very tight, to Henry's point. So maybe
Again, I'm sorry, I just come back to what we've done in the last 2 weeks. We made very specific asks to each department. Answer our asks by end of day Friday, so we can review where you are. And then based on those asks, we can determine as a Board of Estimate and Tax, the appropriate actions, right? We made no asks of IT tonight beyond what they already gave us. So there's no action for them. We made major asks for ECP. We made major asks for other departments. Come back and show us that you did your best to address those issues, and we can evaluate whether it's enough. We don't have to tier this. We don't have to make it more complicated than it is. We gave very specific direction. Come back and show us you followed that direction. And for those of you who didn't, there's further discussion with the BET about the ramifications of that, of not following the guidance.
I want to go back to something Jim said, if I might. He's very right. The first 5 or 10%, everybody has that in their budget and they can really squeeze it out. Then it becomes counterintuitive. A well-run department, that second 10% cuts into bone and muscle. But in a fat department, they may have 50% fat, and the next 10% is easy for them. And the point is, I agree with you, Ann, using the word tier. There are different categories. So one is, I just want to reinforce what Ed and all of you have done in the last 2 weeks. It's yeoman effort. It's also culturally very different for this city. In the past, BET was trying to give people more money historically. And we had to find money that we could find under the cap. But secondly, I think that if you guys want to set a cap or a number, you can do that. And Tom can put it in the memo saying, we expect you to come back with after your decision. We're looking at a guideline of this. I don't know. And I apologize. I'm not even a member. I'm just advising.
I would keep it as simple as we asked you to go look and refining and reducing this number. Where are you? If you haven't reduced your number when we've asked, because we haven't asked, IT is an example, right? There's ramifications and we can evaluate that on Monday.
But I agree with that, but I would also say we need to come out of all of these meetings with a real number in terms of savings. I mean, it can't be $100,000, or else what have we done for all this time? I mean, we are at 270 now. Can we get to 1%, which is at least for the city, what?
I think that's fair, Ann. But I don't feel like we can answer that question until we have the teams do the homework we asked them to do. And then you can see how far gapped we are.
I agree, but we got to have something that we've walked away that we've actually achieved in terms of savings.
Sure, but that's where it's come back and show us what you did. We've asked you for the last 2 weeks.
I think we're already at a little over $300,000, including what we found today. And I think that, what we said to a number of people is we started to go through it and we noticed the same thing. It was just cut and paste year over year. And we said at the top, without going through individual line items, we said, go back and re-scrub this whole thing. Many of them said, oh, I've already done that. Do you really think that they're going to go back and say, okay, I'm going to look at this really, I'm going to go look at the actuals? I doubt it. If they haven't done it already, they're not going to do it again. They said, yep, they'll come back and they'll raise their hands and say, yeah, I swear I looked at everything. So for those people, we have to treat them. I think we have to treat them on an individual basis. Say, okay, you agree with a 2% reduction then? Do you think, or do we keep sending them back and keep telling them like a petulant child that,
No,
did you have to
no,
go
it's
back and look at it again?
It's a one-time trust, right?
Well,
We
that
asked you
trust
to do it.
doesn't- we've
No,
asked
no,
them
Jim, let
already.
me finish my
We've
thought, Jim. Let me finish my thought. We asked them to come back and scrub their number. Come back and show me you did. If you didn't, there's a penalty associated with that. There's no more discussion of, no, you didn't do it right, go back again.
What
We
is
asked
the-
you to scrub your number, you didn't. We're going to decide what that needs to be reduced by. How much that gets reduced? Well, how far over the mayor's goal of 3.5 are you? How big is your departmental budget overall? And that is what will drive how we set the number for that department. Because you're not going to take a $100,000 department and give them the same haircut you're going to give a $4 million department.
So you're saying
But
that
it
we have
starts
to go
with the piece of trust that says, we asked you to do something, come back and do it.
trust no one, but verify everyone.
Well,
I think
that's the verify
So-
part is this Monday, get the
So-
materials.
So what we do is we have to look at each one on an individual basis and make a decision for each one.
Yes, I think we're in violent agreement on that point.
And I dare say that I'll bet you that most of them come back and say, we can't find anything else.
Right, and if that's the answer, then they get handed a number.
I'm gonna
Manage to that number.
But they need to know that they're going to be handed a number if they don't come back on their own. So so in that regard, there needs to be a communication that if you haven't gone back and looked at your numbers as we have asked you to do, and we find that you haven't done that, then this is the number, you're going to get a blanket number.
The BET will assign a reduction to you. I won't say what it is, but yeah, I have no problem if in the note that Tom sends out, we've asked you to do this. We want these inputs by end of day Friday. Understand if there's no reduction, the BET will assign a reduction to you.
I'm gonna go against the grain a little. Is there any leniency for the departments that are way under 3.5%, or just like everyone's treated the same?
Well, no, not everybody's treated the same because we said different things to different departments. Again, I'll use the example of IT tonight. We asked for nothing more after they made the changes they did. I used ECP from whatever night it was earlier, where we said, overall, your budget sucks, go try this again.
Yeah, for example, Kendrick, Lamont Daniels on community services, he came in at less than 1%. We took it down to 0.5%, and we still asked him to go back and scrub. So to Ed's point, I think it's on a contingent basis depending on the department.
I mean, there are departments that have the same budget as the tax collector. And they don't have the level of productivity is a fraction of what we're getting for what we get for $1 million from the tax collector is head and shoulders above what we might get for $1 million for some of these other departments that we've seen. I just use that as an example. You need to have the productivity of dollars.
Yeah. So look, I think we're all saying the same thing slightly differently. So let me try it one more time. Okay. Tom, we want to go back to all the departments that we asked to scrub their numbers. And by end of day Friday, you decide what works for you. We want a view of where they are. Please understand, if you haven't moved off your original number, the Board of Estimate and Tax reserves the right to set a lower budget target for you. That's it. That's what goes out to the departments. We get that input over the weekend and we sit down Monday and we decide based on the size of the budget, the overall department, the impact, etc., what the, I'll use the word penalty, will be to each department. To your point, Ann, right? Tax assessors department, maybe they didn't find anything, but the return on investment there says you're close enough, we'll leave it, right? Other departments where you're coming in at 6-7% on a 3.5% budget increase target, we're going to penalize you harder. We can't do it until we get the inputs from the team. Is that fair? Can we close on that and agree that that's how we'll approach this?
I agree with that. And Mr. Abrams, thank you for your leadership in deciding and pulling that all together. Thank you.
We're a team in this, guys, so we'll figure it out together.
And
I
I'm not,
agree with that approach too.
I'm not gonna bet against Jim Player. He's been through the budget wars, and you have to start off skeptical and you go from there.
Yeah.
That's the great reality. It's just tough, and it's not easy. Everybody wants to agree and give money. Nobody wants to cut back. I want to compliment all of you. This is my 4th year going through this, and you guys have done yeoman job changing the culture and the approach that people know. I can't fluff. I better watch what I do with other. I better watch how I do this. It's brought it to a whole new level in a positive way. We're not to the promised land yet, but it's a great first step. And I thank you because it took a lot of time and effort.
Let's just see if we can figure out how to do it again tomorrow night, guys.
Bring it home.
So one other thing, what we're going to get tomorrow, how deep a level are you going to be able to give us information, Tom? Because, you know, we're talking about big numbers there, and we could easily get lost in the weeds in that.
Yeah, so I'll send you the budget book link with the direct pages reference that answered a couple of your questions that you raised, Jim, about the carryovers and the line item summary, similar to a format that what I have, but it's not dozens and dozens of pages. The budget book has obviously a significant amount of information in that. But in addition to that, Lunda has a presentation. If he's not done with it, he will be tomorrow. That will be sort of a summary view for us to go through. And as soon as I get my hands on that, I'll get it out to you guys.
Tom, do you have a link to the head count? Because that's a big issue.
Yeah.
And it's a big complaint. Issue number 1 is just the raw growth of numbers. And secondly, this year there was almost no increase, but there was a shift from grant funding to local funding. And that was with money that they knew was temporary. I really think the BET might need some of those statistics. And that's critical.
If I could add, the email that we all received from Lisa Shanahan and Tom Livingston. Lisa did talk about some specific programs that would be new relative to BOE. I went back to both of them and I asked them, can they be more specific? Can they be more specific that will help us go through this analysis and identify it and make sure that we're not necessarily missing any low-hanging fruit? Because I'm just coming in at the end of this. So and as we've talked about, this BOE budget is very complex. So if we can have head starts from some other people, that would be helpful. And the same with you and you, Tom, and Henry, because you have you've scrubbed these numbers all.
So, all right. So Tom, you'll share everything you can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the the Board of Ed budget book like the back of my hand.
No,
but if you have specific questions, I can take them to Lunda. He knows the book by like the back of his hand, and we can point you in the right direction.
Yeah,
Maybe
I mean,
take a look at that memo that Tom and Lisa, they did refer to a couple of things like a welcome center, things like that.
no, understood, right? And it's going to be a challenging conversation. It always is. It's not going to be as transparent as any of us like. We know that. And there's going to have to be some compromise and meet in the middle or below the middle. And we'll get through it, right?
I have a technical accounting question. Given that the BOE budget can't go lower, and it seems as if some shifting has happened from the BOE to city, can the city take on more of that budget such that the BOE's budget increase isn't as large, so that it gives us greater flexibility in years to come of not being beholden to a larger historic?
That's a great question.
Right now, we provide $30 million of in-kind services to the Board of Ed. Accounting, legal, accounts payable, IT, debt service. I am very upset with that because no one perceives it properly. So when the Board of Ed has a $225 million budget and the city has 195, it's really 255 for the Board of Ed and 165 for the city. And that's how I get my 60%. Then you add, as the cost accountant that I am, if you then add all the grant money that they spend, okay, then you add what the state spends for their teachers' pensions, they're well above $300 million. The problem I have with the Board of Ed is they don't do zero-based budgeting, which you all have been advocating. Okay? What they do is they say, well, this is what we spent last year. Here's why we need 27 million more. I want to go back and say, what did you spend it on? Was it recruiting fees for a superintendent 3 years ago that never comes out of the budget again? Was it programs that failed, but you get to keep playing with the money? There's no zero-based budgeting. And so I keep contemplating every year to switch that. Let them put into their own budget the 30 million that we support so everyone can see that explicitly. Same thing we had with the insurance fund. They claim that the city paid for their workers' comp and for their liability, auto and property insurance. I have not done that since I got here. I couldn't understand why I was supposed to pay for their insurance coverages. So these things are buried. It's all a political game. It's all about public relations and the spin. And so I find it hard. And when Lunda's very good and he makes a presentation and it's very distracting unless you're very focused on what you want to talk about. I went through something like 10 years of their budget books and put together some statistics, but I wasn't going to reveal it to anybody because I figured I'd get shot in the back. But I'll be glad to share it with you guys. Maybe those numbers would be helpful and relevant and useful, but they're tough and it's emotional. But I would not put increases on our budget just to avoid this minimum budget requirement. They should own up to and be accountable for every dollar that they spend. The problem is no one holds them accountable.
And there's little recourse for us to do so based on state laws and statutes as well.
Well, but that's the point. If you can't fund them lower for any reason, I think even if enrollment goes down, and if you're not allowed to tell them how to spend the money, yet you're frustrated, we give them all this money, I don't know where they really spend it, and I'm not happy with the results, then what are you supposed to do?
Right. There's little recourse.
Well, the little recourse is that top line. And
Yeah.
so I'm frustrated. I think your approach to cost cutting, and it's more than that. You guys were terrific. You said, what about the efficiency? How do we get a return? This one gives me a 10 times return. So that's a good investment. You're thinking like business people, which is wonderful to hear. Doing it with the Board of Ed, it's going to be a challenge. I will send you the statistics I've compiled. They're all out of this year or prior years' Board of Ed budgets. I focus mostly on headcount, payroll cost, and enrollment. And I tried to use some statistics there. And if that's helpful, that's great.
Thank you, Henry.
You're welcome.
Can I ask Ann a question? Did you mean, when you were asking Henry about that, did you mean to say how much more could the city assume, and thinking that we would have more control over that?
A combination.
Okay.
A combination. It would be that we have a greater level of control.
Right.
We have
That's what
a greater level of transparency. And we don't end up with these ever increasing budgets that can't go back.
It makes perfect sense. The challenge with it is the craziness that the state puts us through. Once it's in a Board of Ed budget, it stays in a Board of Ed budget, and that can never go lower.
But
So it's not just a city issue for us to resolve.
But maybe is there a bridge budget, which, Henry, you've put everything to the side? And then when you say, this is BOE, but it's the city's handling a lot of this.
Well, that's
They
$30
already-
million of in-kind services today.
from an implementation, okay, let's say they wanted 27 million, 15 million is payroll. How do we have our money control people that are on their payroll? We're gonna pay them on our payroll with benefits, but they don't have the job security if they were hired by the school. It might get messy. I understand your concept, which is, we'll give you an increase. It's gonna be in part of our budget. And then next year, we can cut it back because we don't have a minimum requirement on that. So I think that's clever, and we might want to check with corporate counsel. And that might be a way to get around the minimum budget requirements, that every year, whatever we give them as an increase is going to be part of a city budget for Board of Ed. We'll give them the money on day one, July 1st, but at least we're not beholden to that state requirement.
Yeah, it's interesting, but to your point, that's a conversation that first has to happen with corporate counsel.
I think so. But that's thinking out of the box, and we give you extra points.
Yeah, that's it. That's a great thought. All right, get some rest. Tom, you're clear on for the city side departments, the note that needs to go out.
And I look forward to seeing your analysis, Henry.
It was, okay. I would call it more a compilation and not an analysis.
Fine.
But what I did was, so for some years, I may have 3 different numbers of enrollment because it came from 3 different years of their budget books.
Yep.
And you come to a number that seems close, same thing with dollars. But I found it interesting, and I think it tells a story, so I'm glad to share. I'm sorry, I have a problem. I'm not allowed to leave the BET meeting before 10. So I have to.
You can stay here by yourself, Henry.
Thank you very much. Story of my life. Thank you, Ed. Thank you all.
Good night, all.
Good night. Bye-bye.
And
At least
thank
I left.
you very much for your leadership. I really appreciate it. It's
Yep.
terrific.
Ed, terrific. Thank you.
All right, see ya.
Boy, you're the backstop there.
Good night, everyone.
Okay.
Good
bye-bye.
night.